we are starting off Back 4 Blood strong with one of your guys' favorite series, and one of my personal favorites as well, the ranking series. I'm going to be ranking something that I do have full experience of, which is going to be, of course, Fort Hope and all of its features, because it's the social space and it's very easy to rank. Alrighty, so coming in at our very first spot, this is going to end up being Coach, the NPC, which gives you Swarm Mode, which I personally don't prefer. And then shortly after, in the second spot, as an immediate follow-up, we've got the Boxing Arena, / the Speed Bag. This is going to be one of those goof-off areas where you can just screw around with your buddies and you can just melee when you're looking for a Q, or you can end up just being AFK, or you literally can just mess around with your friends. I've done just stupid stuff in the lobby while just, waiting for a game, or just for the sake of my own amusement. And that's why I'm going to be putting it here at the very first spot, because it's just something simple, and it's nothing really meant to be too crazy, but it's just enough to keep you from getting bored. Alrighty guys, coming in at our next spot, this is going to end up being Sergeant Phillips. Now, the reason why I'm putting him here is because he really serves no purpose in Fort Hope other than just giving you the menu to access the game modes. Like, literally, that's all he does, and I think it's just kind of boring. I know a lot of the NPCs are meant to be just simple things like that, but that's honestly the least interesting thing he could possibly do. So that's why I'm putting him there. And then shortly after Phillips, we've got Chenda. She ends up giving you the supply stream, which is more of a importance than would it be for Sergeant Phillips' game menu options, but it's not by much. Alrighty guys, now we've got a much more important character in terms of what they offer you in Fort Hope, and this is going to end up being Garner. He's the guy that ends up managing all your card decks, and the card decks are vastly important in terms of the gameplay with Back 4 Blood. You end up having your solo pack, which thank God they add one for solos. They also have a multiplayer one, and then they also have got the PvP modes. So you have all these different decks that you need to manage. However, though, you can end up making different decks. You can make ones based off your preferences, or your friends' preferences, or even the game mode's preferences. It really is up to you, and I think that Garner is a Chad. Alrighty guys, now coming in at our very next spot here, this is going to end up being the customization room. This isn't linked to an NPC, this is once again just a feature in Fort Hope, but this allows you to customize your character and put on all the custom skins, or the variants of skins that you want, because you can actually customize them more in depth than you think you can. I originally thought this game was just going to be preset outfits, but even though it is that, you also have the option, if you want to end up having a different headpiece, body piece, and leggings, all from different outfits as far as I'm aware. At least that's how I understand. I've yet to unlock anything other than the defaults, and I have my pre-order ones. But, however, though, this feature is honestly one of my favorites, because I just love the idea of making my characters look cool and have all these fun customization stuff. And being able to make your character look cool in this game is something that I feel like is going to be a very big grind incentive for a lot of people, because people like going for cool-ass skins. And I don't know if this game's going to have necessarily a battle pass later on down the line, but people like those tier 100 looking type of skins where it's just like, yeah, I got a skin and it looks super cool and I'm willing to show it off. It's not like you really have to worry about being like flashy. It's not like you're trying to blend in anywhere, so it's just, for fun, man. Alright, and now we have got the Armory, which is technically run by the NPC Dusty. This was only available to us just at the launch of the game. They actually didn't let us see the Armory back in the beta. So this is the area that I am the least familiar with, but however, though, this is the area that I end up really enjoying my time in, and it's something easy to understand. All it is that you end up going around and you customize your gun's camos, and you don't end up messing around with the attachments. That's for the firing range, which we'll get to shortly. But just being able to look around at your guns and see them and apply the camos that you want, because there's so many camos in this game that you just get straight off the rip. And there's also some camos that you can earn later down the line. And really, just depending on which camos you grind for and what your preferences is, you can be able to get hey, I want to be able to get a gold M4, or hey, I want to get a pink SMG, or hey, I want to end up getting a cool yellow baseball bat or a fire pistol. And you can choose to customize the gun really however you want. And once you get in a game, eventually you'll end up getting attachments too as well. And then you'll have this cool, really badass weapon that you can end up just flaunting to your teammates. And it makes it feel really cool. I enjoy customization in video games when it does happen to be over the top. Especially in a game where it doesn't really matter if you have stealth. Who cares about having a flashy outfit in a single player predominantly based franchise, Because the zombies aren't going to see you from a farther distance because you're glowing a certain color. That's more of a PvP game. So, if you wanted to end up mentioning that, I guess you could say you have a valid point with PvP, but I think it really doesn't apply just because this game's mostly single player. And then finally, guys, for our last feature, this is going to end up being, of course, the firing range. The firing range acts as a multi-purpose area because not only can you end up using it as a firing range, you can end up using it as a 1v1 pit, which was one of my requests from the devs, because you can team damage people in here. You can end up taking whatever gun you want, or melee weapon you want, and you can even use your fists if you really want to, and just beat the crap out of each other and fight. It's not like the boxing arena where you can just melee repeatedly and just do nothing. You actually can do damage in here, so it would be more fitting, honestly, if the boxing ring did allow you to have damage, but apparently you have to do it out here, but it's still cool nonetheless. So you get to either test out your guns, or you can end up just messing around with your teammates and battling to the death, which honestly is something that I really want to see. You can even do fun things, like I've seen people try to actually, ever since the beta, make trick-shotting a thing in Back 4 Blood, so they take like snipers and they shoot the targets in here, which is pretty cool. So that's also another thing you can do. You can do trick shots, 1v1s, you can test out your weapons, and also it just looks really cool to like just test out all your guns and stuff like that, and just kind of like get warmed up for the day. So that's really, honest to God, why I think that this is the best feature, because it also is just nice to run around with your gun, by the way. I don't know about you guys, but I don't like running around without my gun. I think it's a little bit weird. I kind of feel naked without my gun. Today's video, guys, we're going to be ranking all the Back 4 Blood survivors from worst to best. This way we can not only end up figuring out which character is the most fun to play as, but also what will in turn end up being the best combos, because technically this is so that way you can end up making metas as well, because the characters all have abilities now, which in Left 4 Dead they did not have. So it was kind of interesting to make this list with that in mind. You know, there's the characters for their enjoyable traits and their likable personalities, but however though, some statistically are better than others. I did try to make this list the best that I could. There may be a little bit of bias here and there, but I did try to be the most fair and logical with this list as best I could. I even also, just like with all my other Back 4 Blood and also Left 4 Dead ranking videos, took the community's opinion in mind. So technically, this isn't my personal list. I'm actually going to be making this out of a combo on my best educational guess for what I feel like is the best character for the game in terms of their skills, the most enjoyable in terms of quality of their personality, and just also what I feel like that majority rule would be. That is going to be the defining factors within this ranking. If you happen to actually have a different opinion on this list, please feel free to put it down below in the comments. I would love to actually see your guys' comments, because that way we can compare and contrast to see what is the best character in certain situations. I might end up having a list that might be different from yours, and so I'd like to see what the majority rule is compared to what I just happen to guess. And if you guys happen to enjoy this video, at the end, of course, when you've seen the whole entire thing, I would definitely very much appreciate if you guys could show your support by dropping a like, comment, and subscribe and all that beautiful stuff. It would really mean a lot to me, and it will be allow us to be able to share our opinions on really what is truly the best character in this game. But yeah, guys, enough with the intro here. Let's get on straight with the video and see what is the best Back 4 Blood characters by ranking them from worst to best. Alrighty, guys, so coming in at our very first spot, this is going to be, in my humble opinion, what I believe is going to be the least popular character in this entire game, and that is going to end up being the gameplay you see on screen of me playing as Jim. Now, I know that a lot of you may end up being Jim fans. Now, if you are a Jim fan, please definitely feel free to comment down below why you like Jim, but in my humble opinion, I feel like a lot of people really don't care for Jim. It's not that Jim is bad. Really, any character in Back 4 Blood is quite enjoyable. None of them are really bad. There's not like a, you know how there's the jokes of Rochelle. There's not really like a Rochelle-themed character in this game. Not even Jim. Jim's quite good. I enjoy him. He definitely is good company. Now, we have to go over a lot of things with Jim, just like how we're going to be going over with everyone else. Let's talk about Jim's personality and who he is as a character and what he contributes to the story, plus also what his just abilities and his weapons are and what makes him, you know, just a good character in terms of statistics. So, character traits. Now, unfortunately, when it comes to this game, the cutscenes in the story are limited with any of the other characters outside of Holly, Evangelo, Mom, and Walker. That's because a lot of the pre-rendered cutscenes are themed around Mom, Holly, Evangelo, and Walker. And any of the other bonus characters, such as Jim, now Hoffman, because Hoffman's not a part of the original 4 crew now, Doc, and also Carly, those characters are a little bit harder to end up getting their story, because you have to end up earning it through in-game dialogue, because any of the pre-rendered scenes, they're done with the other 4 characters that I previously listed. And the only time you end up getting the characters to slightly change is if you end up playing certain missions, and they're just like kind of like one-liners. And I think that that's kind of a little bit understandable. but it does make it kind of hard to end up having a full understanding of the characters, because really they're pretty much in no cutscene dialogue. You have to get it through the gameplay, so which means you have to play the characters. And in my humble opinion, I played them all a decent amount of time now, a little over 2 weeks. I've had the game, since the earliest day possible. And I'd say Jim is just okay. Not bad, not good, but just okay. He's got a lot of battle chatter, and he's, kind of a little bit too generic for my liking. Don't get me wrong, he does have some enjoyable dialogue, but really the best way I can put it to you is he's just basically a stereotype. He pretty much for the most part is your ex-military veteran, tough as nails, but you're still humble and respectful, just, normal American guy, and that's okay, and that's nothing wrong with that. I mean, Walker's kind of like that in his own regard, and Walker's in a different part of the list for some other reasons other than that, so it's not just that alone. But the thing is, though, that's all that's going for Jim, and I really don't like his statistics either, because now we're going to be going on to what makes him, a good character or not. So he starts off with a Magnum, or a revolver, which is a pretty decent pistol overall. He's one of the only few characters that gets a gun to start off with, and for that matter, a pretty decent gun, I'd say. And Jim has more of, a sniper build to his class. He's more meant for passive gameplay and long-range shots. So if you're a very slow and methodical type of person, in fact, actually, the way that the game is, it's kind of meant to be that way in higher difficulties. So depending on if you're playing on a higher difficulty like Veteran or Nightmare, Jim might be better for you. But the thing is, though, is I don't like that, and I feel like a lot of people don't play the higher difficulty game modes. So that's why I've just ranked Jim so low, is because he's an uncommon pick for a variety of different reasons, and his story is just not as enticing as the other characters. So unfortunately, Jim is the least, fun character to play on in the spots, but he is still a good character nonetheless. Alrighty guys, so now that we've got Jim out of the way, let's end up going on to our next character. And right after Jim, this is going to end up being Mom. Now, for Mom, in my humble opinion, Mom is just really just not a good character statistically. In terms of her storyline, she actually contributes a lot to the game, because like I said in a previous statement, she's pretty much in most of the cutscene dialogue and just a lot of the cutscenes in general. She has a major part. Although I don't understand the idea of switching her out as one of the main crew members for Hoffman, because Hoffman, if you guys don't remember, from the alpha and also the beta, he was kind of associated with the main original four. When you first played the game, Hoffman was one of the main characters that you first were exposed to, and so in my head, he's the OG and Mom's not. Mom's still a DLC character in my head, but apparently Turtle Rock decided to flip that, and now Mom is. And in my opinion, I just think that's just weird, because unless it was a thing that they couldn't change, like the cutscenes, Hoffman's a much more popular character than Mom is, and Mom just isn't really that intriguing in comparison to a lot of the other characters. She has a lot of dialogue, a lot more rich than what Jim's is, because she talks a lot about her son, and you can feel empathy for her as much as she's kind of a hard ass. She's basically, I feel like, because here's the thing, is that you can see qualities and traits of all the Left 4 Dead characters in their own different ways associated with the Back 4 Blood ones. You can see it. It's like they're taking after them. And Mom is trying to portray what I feel is like a female version of Bill from Left 4 Dead. And it's okay, but it feels like it's hokey and cheesy. Mom's dialogue feels a lot like it's kind of forced. And I actually enjoy her more when she's more humble and she takes after the Mom characteristic about why she's called Mom. I enjoy the funny lines, where she, says, stop with the poetry, fuck nuts, and she's, joking around and swearing all over the top. That's funny, but I don't really enjoy it when that's pretty much a majority of her dialogue, because I get the point is that she's supposed to be a tough but still sweet, loving mother figure for a lot of the crew, and that's because of, the fact that her son died. So there is a storyline narrative, and I get that, and I can appreciate that. But that's just not my favorite types of traits with a character. I personally enjoy more, rather, when there's a character that's more fun and goofy, and has a subtle hint of seriousness, versus mostly serious and uptight over the time, and has a little bit of funny dialogue. Seriousness too much of the time gets repetitive and annoying, and it feels a lot like battle chatter when it goes on for too long, and it just feels like there's a lack of personality. When Mom talks about her son, when Mom's being affectionate and, you know, sweet towards the rest of the crew, and she ends up having it where, like, there's moments where people call her Chris, and then, you know, they even get more personable with her, that's more enjoyable. And I understand that's a yin and a yang thing, and it's meant to, you know, contrast with her tough persona. But just because it's there doesn't mean I have to like it, and I feel like a lot of people don't either. I don't really see Mom get picked nearly as much as the other characters. Now, however, though, I will say that her kit is interesting, to say the least. Her abilities are more preferable than some others, but however, though, it's circumstantial. And I really don't care for her gun. Let's just get the gun out of the way. Mom's double-barrel shotgun, which is her signature weapon. This, in my opinion, is one of the worst weapons in the entire game. The double barrel felt a lot better back in the beta because Mom was available back in the beta, and so also her signature weapon was there. And her double barrel doesn't feel nearly as good as back in the beta. It's just a one shot and then boom, you gotta reload type of gun. You can't separate the shots, so you can't do like one part of the barrel and then the other part of the barrel. It's just a one shot kill and that's it. But however, though, on certain zombies, and most of the time it's pretty much a lot of the zombies in general, you really can't kill many zombies at all. You think that with a shotgun, especially a double barrel, that because it has to reload constantly, that they would, I don't know, give it the ability to reload at least somewhat faster, or it would have a lot of collateral damage, or just more damage in general. But to be honest, it doesn't feel that way. The double barrel really can only get like one and maybe two like commons at a time, 3 if you're really lucky. And that's without armor, that's without them having like any sort of like advantage over you like the riot gear zombies. That's just normal commons. So any of the uncommon infecteds, and especially the special infected where they have certain weak spots that you must hit and you gotta be accurate with, the double barrel really sucks in those instances. And you really can't do anything about it because a tall boy will get to you before you can really reload and pop off another shot. And literally, like, but if you try to use a double barrel and lead with that, you're gonna die like probably 99.9% of the time because the DPS is way too slow, and the damage is not strong enough for how slow the DPS is, and overall, it's just like one of the most, you know, weakest and most uncomfortable guns to use in the game. I would much rather pick up a pistol, a melee weapon, hell, I would use anything else over the double barrel. I used to like it a lot more in the beta, and maybe that was just a sense of novelty because I was trying to use every character. Because any character, like, type of game where, like, there's a certain character that has one ability over the other, I try to, you know, get used to them all in case I need to end up making a meta, and I need to be flexible. I did that in things like Overwatch, Rainbow Six Siege, some of the Call of Duty games. And that's the case with this game. I also wanted to make a video only after I ended up playing the characters for a certain amount of time so I knew what was the best character. And I just can't say that about Mom. Now, I will say this. Mom does have one saving grace about her abilities. She can auto-revive people if she really wants to. Like, she gets one auto-revive per round, which means that if any clutch scenario, like let's say she's the last one up, she can quickly get somebody up, and it's very huge. That's a big clutch ability. And honestly, it's a very good contrast, because it makes it that way Doc, because you think they would go to Doc, is not overpowered with all those abilities, because now it's spread out amongst them, amongst the crew, makes all the characters worthwhile. And also, Mom gives you a extra life, which means that anytime that you die, and you're running low on retries, that one extra life can resave your run. Now, I understand that you could theoretically, depending on if you get to a certain chapter, could just continue your run later, but it's so inconvenient and annoying to do that. I would much rather continue my run as I'm playing it. And I can almost say with certainty all of you guys feel that way too. So Mom mostly is excelling in her storyline. Right after that, I'd say her abilities, and then after that, she kind of just dips off. She's better than Jim, because Jim's abilities and story is not really as good. But in my humble opinion, just because Mom has better dialogue and a little bit better abilities doesn't make her really that strong of a character. I would much rather play any of the other remaining characters over Mom, and it shows through my playtime. So that's where I put Mom. Let me know what you think, and now let's move on to another character, guys. Alrighty guys, so for our next character after Mom, this is going to end up being one of my favorites, but I am putting her low on the sake of the fact that she's not really, I feel, as popular nor as strong as the other characters, and this is going to end up being Holly. Now, Holly, in my opinion, like I said, I really like her as a character. I think she's cool, she has a lot of fun dialogue, and she even has some pretty solid abilities, but in comparison to the other characters, she's just not nearly as strong. So let's talk about Holly for a second. So she's one of the main, I guess you could say technically original 4. I know that by launch that there is 8 characters, but I'm going off of the fact that since I played the alpha and the beta, this was one of the 4 characters that I originally was once exposed to first. So that's why I consider her one of the original 4. And Holly, in my opinion, has some pretty solid dialogue. Before, back in the game, when it was in the alpha and the beta, her dialogue really was just nothing but battle chatter, I felt. She had a couple of one-liners here and there that were fun, mostly notably talking about her Bat Dottie, but that was really it. As the game progresses, she has a lot more dialogue, and a lot more enjoyable dialogue, might I add. She feels like, this, in my humble opinion, is what I feel like what they're trying to do with fan service, is that you can even tell by the way that she's dressed and the select, things she says, that she's basically taking after both Ellis and also Zoe. Theoretically, even though obviously this is not canon whatsoever until Turtle Rock were to ever say anything, but I even got a comment like this once, is that basically she is supposed to be like a Zoe Ellis combo, or the technically the theoretical, non-canon, I'm not saying this is real, but like it's supposed to be the makeshift daughter, I guess you could say, like the best of both characters. And I can see some funny Ellis, dialogue here and there that would be similar to what he would say. I can see a lot of fun and kind of sweet moments that remind me of Zoe. She really stands out as her own character, though, I feel like at the end of the day. She does have her own dialogue and her own story and her own character traits that make her not feel like a Zoe and Ellis clone, which is good because we don't want any repeat characters. I rather would just have the original ones. And I would say that Holly is a pretty fun character overall. Lots of dialogue, there's even some funny dialogue of her own, some badass dialogue of her own, and she definitely has the sense of feeling unique and not just stale. I can definitely play Holly on a consistent basis and not feel like I'm getting bored. And as for her kits and also her weapons, she is one of the melee characters of the game, with, of course, her baseball bat, Dottie. Now, is the bat good? I'd really say that all the melee weapons are pretty much the same, but last time I said that, you guys told me that there were significant differences in even Left 4 Dead, and I'm gonna be smart about this one and not say that they're all identical. But from what I can see, I would say the baseball bat's not one of the best guns in the game, or at least melee weapons. I probably would say that the best melee weapons are like the fire axe and the hatchet, and that really Dottie is the weakest melee weapon in the entire game. So in terms of, in comparison, like let's say Evangelo's got a much better melee weapon, and Holly really doesn't excel in this department. She does overall have the ability to end up getting extra health because she has damage resistance, which allows her to melee better, and she has a little bit of stamina, so she can keep up, but it's really just, if you're trying to excel in her melee part of her class, it's the weakest of the bunch. And there's nothing that is really a way to get around that. She's the weakest of one potential category. But however, though, she is still useful. She still, like I said, has lots of damage resistance. So if you're in a situation like the final boss fight, she can be really good to be brought in there because she can, avoid all the acid. And she's pretty good at just keeping the team afloat with the stamina boost. She really doesn't contribute much other than the story, sadly. But she's still fun enough and decent enough that she can keep up. So overall, like I said, none of the characters are bad. None of the characters are bad by any means. But she's not my favorite. I still do like her though, and I do rank her up higher than what I feel like what you guys would say. But I'm trying to be fair and keep everyone's opinions in mind as much as my own, so that's why I have to end up putting her, unfortunately, lower than I would like on the lower half of the list. But that's okay. We're going to be moving on to another character now, and we're about to be at the halfway point. Alrighty guys, so shortly after Holly, I just mentioned him, this is going to end up being now Evangelo. And Evangelo is a slightly better version of Holly. In my opinion, I think that he has a much more likable set of characteristics, such as his personality and just the way that he overall contributes to the story. I also think that his kit is just better than Holly's, in my opinion. So let's talk about Evangelo. So Evangelo in the story is the newest member to the group, even though he is technically one of the earliest that we see with the original 4. And Evangelo ends up having a lot of fun dialogue about him. He's very humble, he's very young and innocent. Evangelo is basically the good guy, the innocent guy of the group. He's not tough and battle-hardened like Jim or Mom, and nor is he cynical and kind of like a smartass, kind of like Holly or Hoffman. He's just the happy-go-lucky, basically the the fun guy, the class clown, the jokey dude. And so therefore, I would say that if anything, he's the Ellis equivalent in this game. Not that he is better, and not that he is basically a carbon copy of Ellis, but I feel like that's what they were trying to go with Evangelo. The fun, goofy character. The one that you don't have to take so seriously all the time. He can be serious at moments, but it's mostly through, like, a genuine, honest fear. So, like, instead of being like, oh, god damn it, like, of course, like, how was I not expecting this, blah, 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 he's more like, oh my gosh, I'm so surprised, what the heck is that thing, that's so crazy, ah! And, like, it's more relatable that way, because it's not something, he's not forcing anything, he's not trying to be like, oh, I'm tough as nails, or being like, oh, I'm gonna pretend to be the tough guy, even though I'm clearly scared. He just embraces it. If he's scared, he embraces it, but he's not a pussy about it either. He's the perfect example of just being a human being. Like, literally, like, if he's scared, but he doesn't, back down from a fight. He'll do something even if it scares him, and that's more rather a sake of bravery, if anything. And that's cool. It's just being like, you know what? He's like the perfect example of an underdog. If he is in the face of triumph, he will go up against it. If there's something intimidating such as the Abomination, even though it might scare him and even though it might be very intimidating, he will fight till the very, very end, and I can respect that. And that's what makes him so enjoyable, is because he's like what we all want to be at points. Even though we happen to have bad days and are scared and come up against challenge, we all want to end up being the hero at the end of the day, and that's what I like about Evangelo. And now going on more rather to his kit, he ends up having a machete, which is slightly better in my opinion than what Dottie is. Now, it's not as good as the fire axe and the hatchet. It's still one of the weaker melee weapons, but it's the only other character in the game that ends up having a melee weapon as a preset. You can't get the fire axe and the hatchet on a character, you have to find it. So in terms of a signature weapon, Evangelo's got the best melee weapon in terms of signature weapons in the game. And that's a good thing, so that's a plus for him. He is very big on stamina, much more than Holly, so like he contributes more to the team that way because he can be really quickly, getting into the action. He's very speedy. And plus also, one of the best abilities about him, which I really do enjoy, is his free breakout ability. For those of you that do not know, because you may or may not end up having Back for Blood yet, but if you've seen select gameplay, if people play Evangelo, you will know that Evangelo gets the ability to instantly break out of any pinning ability, just for free. So if you are pinned by a Hawker spit, if you are pinned by the Bruiser crushing you, if you are pinned by a Sleeper that jumps out at you out of nowhere, you will get one free instant just breakout. And this doesn't involve a card either, you just get this for free. So without having a card slot being taken up, you can basically just have the I'm escaping out of this button, which is in a very clutch scenario, super useful. Now, I would say overall that this isn't the best ability in the game, but it is up there. I'd say at the end of the day, really, when it comes down to it, Evangelo has mostly story going for him, but that one breakout ability automatically just bumps him up higher and higher and higher. It's one of the best abilities in the game. It's not the best, but it's really damn close up there. Being able to just say nope and just if you make a mistake, just undo it is huge. And you only get this once per round, so you do have to be sparing with it, but even though it's once, it's still so good. Imagine if in Left 4 Dead you could do that. Imagine if a charger grabs you or if a hunter pins you, and you could just say, nah, B, I'm just not going to accept that, and you just break out just out of your own command. Your willpower is strong enough to just say, no, I'm getting out. That would have been amazing back then. So it's a very big ability, and it's really great if you think about it that way. So yeah, that's why I'm putting Evangelo here. Even though he is in the middle tier of the characters, and he's not necessarily the best, he's most certainly not the worst. I would say the last four are really going to be the best characters, and what I would personally recommend would be a composition, like what you should make a team out of, but you can really have any mismatch of any of these characters. But we're going to end up moving on to the next character, and we're going to be seeing what their likenesses and their, bad qualities or good qualities are about. Alrighty guys, so now we're going to be coming over to one of my favorite characters to play as, even if I don't necessarily care for their dialogue in comparison to others. And this is going to end up being one of the DLC characters, one of the ones that we end up having later in the game, the one at release. This is going to end up being Carly. Now, Carly, I thought at first was going to be kind of like a Francis ripoff. And I didn't mean that like in a bad way, but that's kind of what I was subconsciously thinking. I thought that the way that they portrayed Carly, I could just like have an image in my head from her looks. I was like, oh boy, I think that this is going to be like a really cheap ripoff of like Francis or something. And I genuinely thought that up until the point that I got Carly. And the good news is about this game is that they did end up clarifying stuff with Carly and all the other characters. At one point in the campaign, once you complete the very first mission, the next bit of cutscenes that you get is a decently long cutscene, and it shows the remaining unlockable characters. It shows Doc, Carly, Jim, and Hoffman. And Carly is shortly right after Doc. She's the second character you see. And Carly is not bad. She's actually kind of cool. She's not like a Francis ripoff. She's not like swearing and being like, ooh, tough guy, or tough girl all the time. And she's not really emo either, like I thought she was going to be. She's not like, oh, I hate everything like Francis was. Because when Francis did that, it was funny. Because he was just being like, he was being satire about it. He was being jokey. You could tell that Francis wasn't 100% all serious. You could tell he was a little bit serious, but he was doing a little bit to just screw with people like Lewis. Carly doesn't do that. I can see that they end up trying to get a lot of the characteristics of Francis and try to like, make Carly out of the qualities of Francis that made him enjoyable, but she does feel original enough that it doesn't feel like a carbon copy. I do want to stress that, by the way. When I keep saying that the characters are inspired but are not carbon copies, that's a big thing, because I know that we all really want to see Left 4 Dead maps and Left 4 Dead characters in this game, and we basically want this to be Left 4 Dead 3, but it's its own independent thing. And sadly, until there is a crossover potentially, there's just no way that we can say that these things are tied in, other than technically Easter eggs that may hint at it one day. And until that time, until that there is a way that we can connect the universes, nobody wants to end up having like a just quote-unquote like pure ripoff. We either want the original characters, or we just want maybe inspiration at the very most with these other characters. No one wants to end up having basically a replacement character for one of our favorites. And Carly, for the for the better or for worse, is just the way she is, and that's fine. You can tell me whether or not you like Carly or not, but I would say that she is okay, and she doesn't end up taking away anything from the Left 4 Dead crew, and she's just her own character, which is good. Now, when it comes to Carly's personality, I don't necessarily think she's the best character in the game. She's not uberly bubbly and, crazy, like, over the top, obviously. She's not like Evangelo. She's not, like, emo and crazy and grumpy or whatever, which is also another good thing. She's just in the middle. She is just a perfect balance between feminine and masculine. I feel like she's trying to go for maybe, like, kind of like a tomboy persona, and that's just what I get the vibe off of. And I'd say overall, she is just medium. She is not really dislikable. She's not really interesting, though, in terms of her dialogue either. She's just one of the main characters that's just not my favorite, and it's just kind of there. A side character, if you will. If she was on a TV show, even though she is technically one of the main characters that you can play as, she would be a side character to me. And that's just the way I see Carly. Now we go over to her kit. In my opinion, she is one of the best kits in the game. One of my personal favorites. First of all, her signature weapon is the best in the game, in my opinion. I think she has the best signature weapon, which is the little TAC-9 SMG. So she is the only one in the entire game that just gets a full-on auto gun for her secondary. That's huge, because all the other characters will either get melee weapons, or they will end up getting pistols, and then in case, for Mom, she ends up getting a double-barrel shotgun. But Carly gets just a full-on just submachine gun, and that's really cool. It's one of the best secondaries in the game, because it's the only secondary in the game that's like this. You can't get any other machine gun in the game, and she just gets this for her character for free. That's really cool. And I'd say that that's a huge plus for having one of the best secondary weapons just being just attached to her character by default. That's big, because it's like a mini SMG. I mean, it's technically like a machine pistol, but it's literally a full-on SMG. I have led with Carly's secondary like it's a lead gun, and it works, and that's really, really good for her character. And her abilities also fit more of my playstyle, because I enjoy running around like in an arcade shooter type of setting where I can just destroy zombies left and right, and I don't have to take it slow and methodical. I can take it slow and methodical. This game definitely is a lot more slower than Left 4 Dead was, but I don't care for it. If I can go fast, I'm gonna go fast, and Carly allows me to do that with her abilities. And that's why I pretty much have been a Carly main for the last little bit. Even though her story is not my favorite, statistically wise, she is my favorite. If this list were more about matter of my personal opinion, and it was also specifically only about stats and not about dialogue, Carly, in my opinion, is the best in the game. Now, I have a separate list for my own personal list, and I also have it different based off of the dialogue and the characters in terms of their story, which is separate than what their skills and their abilities and their weapons are, because I feel like those are two different things and deserving of their own list. But all together, and also with you guys in mind, this is where I placed Carly. You can feel free to let me know whether or not you agree or disagree with her placements in the comment section down below. Alrighty guys, so now we are down to the top 3 survivors. So now, coming in at our number 3 spot, this is going to be one of the original 4 characters. And luckily, this character is really popular, it seems, so I think you guys will like this. And this is going to end up being Walker. Now, Walker is really good in terms of not only his storyline, but also his kit. So let's talk about him. So Walker is a part of the main original 4, and he's also in a lot of the cutscenes. So we get to see a lot of his character personality and everything just straight off the rip. And I feel like that out of everyone, he needed this the most, because he is the most stereotypical right next to Jim. If you remember a while back in the video when I was talking about how that Jim and Walker are both kind of similar in terms of the tough guy, battle chatter, really kind of like just not really personable persona, that's kind of what I'm talking about. He is fun, and he is very humble. If you get to the end cutscene, you'll know that he really ends up enjoying the crew's company, and he wants to have them involved in his life. And, you know, he wants to be able to help everybody. You also know from some other bits in dialogue and stuff like that, he's just mostly just keeping his stuff personable to himself. He doesn't really share much. He doesn't want to end up giving people his drama, and I respect that about him. That's just a likable quality about a person in general. You don't want someone that just, like, moans and complains and basically bitches. And it wouldn't match his persona anyways, because he is a veteran, and he's, trained in guns. He's a tough guy, me macho. And it's a different type of me macho, though, from Mom. Like, Mom is, I feel like, kind of a hard ass, and I feel like Walker, if anything, is just more introverted. He keeps to himself, and you really only end up getting to know him through in-game dialogue. Now, he does have some cutscenes, like I said, that does help, but it's really at the end where he shines the most. Because you get a little bit of dialogue from him at the beginning, but the intro cutscene is just him and Mom trying to, like, negotiate trade, and he's like, oh, well, you can't take the supplies unless you help us out, and, like, he's basically the bodyguard for, like, the whole entire group. Then later on, you end up getting to know him through, like, little in-game dialogue, like I said, and then that starts to build up more of his character. And then the last cutscene is really where he's actually the most open that I feel like he's been, because he wants to bond with everyone. He's just like, hey, we're gonna kick all these zombies' asses together. And that's cool. So it's a thing that happens over time, and you have to earn his dialogue, you have to earn his character development, which is good. It's not just given to you on a silver platter. So, in hindsight, that's okay, and that's actually a good thing. We don't want every single little bit of dialogue just spoiled for us straight out the rip, then the characters would be plain and boring. Now let's move on to his kit. So, Walker is one of the only 3 characters that ends up getting a pistol as a signature weapon, and he ends up getting the Glock. Now, the Glock, I don't really feel is a bad weapon. I think that Jim's pistol is better, and I think that Walker's pistol is okay. It's debatable about whether or not that it's better than Hoffman's M1911. I feel like it's better, so I'm going to say that he does at least not have the worst pistol, which is good. But yeah, Walker's Glock does seem pretty strong. And when you end up having a choice between picking one of the characters that, if you want to just get a certain gun, I would say right after Carly and right after Jim, Walker has the next best signature weapon. Because I want to have guns and not melee weapons. So Holly and Evangelo are definitely lower. And Mom's just flat out under Evangelo and Holly, because I'd rather with melee than use the shotgun, the double barrel, to be honest. So I would say in terms of signature weapons, Walker's got that going for him. And for team abilities, so Walker ends up making it so that way the team is basically more like reinforced and like equipped more than anything. And overall, he gives you the vibe of like, you know, guns a-blazing military shooting style. If you enjoy the more gun-based gameplay rather than the ability, throwable, and melee-based gameplay, Walker's more of your style, I'm gonna feel. And he overall, I say, gets picked quite a lot. I'd say that from what I can see, it's a coin toss about whether or not that he's going to be picked over Hoffman. You know, some people like Walker just as much, if not more, than Hoffman, and I feel like those are the characters that people are going to pick when they want to try to get his type of build. Nobody really picks Jim, and nobody I can see really picks Mom unless they're on the higher difficulties, because Mom's clutch on higher difficulties because of her abilities, but that's really all she has going for her. And more people play the lower tier game modes anyways, so you really don't see a lot of Moms. And so I'd say that Walker is really just the opposite of Hoffman in terms of his kit. If you don't want to play Hoffman, you can easily switch over to Walker. And that's just a lot better than Jim, in my opinion. I like Jim, but I feel like if you're going to switch from Hoffman, you're going to pick Walker over Jim. So Walker, he's a good character. I definitely think he's deserving of being in the top 3, most certainly. But he's not my personal favorite, just an FYI. I really don't play him that much. So that's why I was kind of having a little bit of a hard time trying to have as much enthusiasm for him. But I most certainly definitely appreciate what he does for the game. And at the end of the day, he is basically what Back 4 Blood's coach was meant to be. Not the other coach, not the one that's called coach, but Walker is basically the Back 4 Blood equivalent of coach, if I were to relate him to somebody. He has a lot of those qualities. And even though he's not as funny or as upbeat as Coach, he's got the more serious and more protective vibe about him. So that's good. They took certain qualities about Coach and gave it to Walker. I'm very happy about that. And at the end of the day, it's your guys' choice whether or not you want to play him. He's not my personal cup of tea, but I know that he is deserving of being up here on the list. Alrighty guys, so now we have got our last 2 characters. Coming in at the number 2 spot, this is going to end up being Doc. Now for Doc, I really like Doc. Doc is one of my personal favorite characters, and I even know that it's one of my friends' favorite characters. If you guys have seen Vengeance5714 or Jake on the channel, he's one of my best friends, one of my main gaming buddies. And he really loves Doc. He mains Doc all the time. Doc is one of his preferred characters, and that's just because he likes playing the medic role. And Doc is a really good medic character, because when it comes to this game, really the next best medic character after Doc is Mom, because Mom has her instant revive and the extra life. But we all know about what I mentioned earlier about why Mom is just really not that fun to play as, unless it's in certain circumstances. So really what you want to do is you want to rock Doc if you're going to be doing a sort of medical build. And that's because Doc has a lot of things going for her, such as the fact that she can auto-heal teammates with basically wound dressing, and she doesn't need to have a med kit or a band-aid. She can just heal like just once per round for everybody really, and just give them some free heals. And she can heal for a 25% extra effectiveness in comparison to the other characters, which means that she's really, really good at healing, no matter what she has, whether it be band-aids or the med kit or the pain pills, or even her her wound dressing, her band-aids that she has on herself. She's really good at healing. You want to pretty much have a Doc at all times if you can have one. In my opinion, you should always run Doc. Like, you really don't have any disadvantages to running Doc, and you really have significant advantages to running her. You pretty much can have really good heals all the time, and you never have to worry about running a toolkit to end up getting a toolkit room to heal your trauma. You never really have to worry about having a med kit on you at all times in order to end up being safe. She's just really good at doing her job, which is being a doctor. And it also ties into her character as well. Now, Doc is not the most bubbly person in the world. In fact, I actually kind of learned really quickly about Doc, is that she's very, very sassy. So for Doc, she is a medical personnel, so you think that she would be sweet and caring and almost kind of bubbly, but not really. She's caring and she's nice, but she, like I said, is very, very sassy. For example, there is some dialogue with Doc where, for example, when she ends up shooting somebody and causing friendly fire, they're like, oh, you know, Doc, what are you doing? You're supposed to heal people, not hurt people. And she says stuff like, well, it's not my fault that you're in my way. and you can kind of imagine where it starts to go from there. So when it comes to Doc's dialogue, she is really sparse with her affection. She really only ends up giving affection to people that really deserve it. So, like, for example, if people are down, she'll end up trying to reassure them and pick them back up. If people are being nice to her, of course, she'll be nice and at least polite back. But if people end up giving her crap and insulting her, she'll let you know that you messed with the wrong woman. Like, she'll end up giving you some really, pretty much, like, stereotypical, like, sass. Like, if you listen to her dialogue, like I said, it's really obvious that she's really had enough of your shit. And it's cool, though, because it's not all the time, so it's not annoying either. It's really well balanced. She'll be affectionate, sure, and she'll also be sassy, sure, but she's really struck a perfect balance where it's situational. If your character interacts with her in such a way, the dialogue is deserved, and it's not like it's unnecessary. So if you end up shooting Doc, she'll let you know. If she shoots you, she just kind of will be sassy and just be like, so? If you do anything else of the sort, she'll gladly tell you what for. And it's fun, because that gives a yin to her yang. She's serious, but she's also comedic because of her sass, and she's enjoyable that way. I don't like a character that's, you know, all the way, like, uptight, where they got, like, a thumb shoved up their ass. And I don't like whiners and you know, bitches and annoying characters either. And I also really don't like characters that are basically a clown. And Doc is really, if you think about it, the best of everything. And she has a really good kit in addition to that. Other than the #1 spot, she's one of the most enjoyable characters in the entire game because her storyline and her character development alongside her kit is one of the most balanced in the entire game. Really, honestly. For her medical abilities and her healing abilities, she's basically always a positive influence on the team, no matter what. Her character development and her storytelling, even though she's not a part of the original 4, was handled really well. Through her dialogue and through her cutscenes, I even enjoy her end cutscene, because Doc has a lot of contributing towards the end cutscene. I feel like out of all the characters, in terms of the end cutscene, the ones that contribute the most is going to be probably Walker, Mom, and her. And that's a good thing, because she's one of the characters out of the later 4 that you have to earn through gameplay normally. So I'm hoping with DLC later on down the line we will see more of Doc, and also get some more clarification on the other characters, because they all deserve it. Because at the end of the day, everyone's got their own favorite character, and I think that Doc is one of mine. Alrighty guys, so coming in at the #1 spot, you guys will probably get a really big kick out of this. This is going to end up being your boy, Peter Griffin. Hoffman is the best character in the entire game. And the funny part about it is that I feel like that a lot of people looking from the outside of the community would think that he would be the stereotypical dork character. And he really is not. He is like the exact opposite of what you would expect. Even though he's got the the glasses and the little bit of the man pudge going, and he's not really the most skinniest fellow, and he does kind of look like that he is kind of like nerdy, dorky scientist guy. And it also seems that like he would be the type of dude that would be a family man, be a lot with his mom. And you're not entirely wrong. But the thing is though, is that just as much as he is a dork, he's also a badass, and that's so cool. They made a perfectly nerdy, dorky character into a cool guy, but they didn't ruin his nerdiness by doing that. It's not like he has this character development where he goes from nerd to cool guy. Like let's say for example, the stereotypical old Disney Channel movies where they would have like the nerd character, and they would like take off their glasses and extend their hair, and they would change their outfit, and they would go to cool guy all of a sudden or cool girl all of a sudden. No, it's not like that. He's still pudgy. He's still got the glasses, and he still talks about his mother, and he's still very much a dork, but he's still a badass. Like, he really has a lot of great qualities about him. Like, let me explain. So, basically, he's pretty much, like I said, a stereotype. He talks about his mother, like, pretty much on a regular basis. Like, he'll talk about how much that he loves his mother and that he misses his mother, but unfortunately that she died, and he basically stayed with her to the very end. So he is a mama's boy. And even though he's got the nerdy, dorky persona where he believes in, like, conspiracy theories and science and all that stuff, he still enjoys shooting guns, kicking zombie ass, lighting stuff on fire, and he doesn't back down either. You can see that he's willing to not only end up being like a superhero and like put people, you know, like in a situation where they can excel, but he's also willing to put his own life on the line. Take the end cutscene, for example. I want you guys to end up imagining this for a second. Imagine that you are in a scenario such as Evangelo in the end cutscene and Hoffman is here to save you. There is a part in the end cutscene where Evangelo has a boulder about to crush him, and you know, out of nowhere, like Hoffman just decides, you know what, screw it, I'm not gonna end up risking having him die. I'm gonna just jump in and I'm going to save him. And what happens is that he literally puts his life on the line. He drops his gun, puts it to the side, and he takes his like, keep in mind, he's not really the most athletic, but apparently he proved me wrong. But he literally took all of his weight and just basically linebacker shoved Evangelo out of the way and saved his life. And that shows you that as much as he's a dork, as much as that he might seem like a stereotype, don't screw with Hoffman. He will end up saving people if he ends up thinking that they're a good person and a team player. But if you're a zombie or someone that's just basically an asshole, he'll let you know and he'll stand up for himself and others. And that really makes him cool. He is basically, in my opinion, like the stereotypical dad. Like, he is like a Giga Chad dad. He stands up for people, he kicks zombie ass, but he has enough free time to be himself and to end up, you know, doing what he loves. And you gotta respect that. So at the end of the day, that's what makes Hoffman the most enjoyable character. And plus also his kit's really cool too. He ends up getting a pistol, even though it's not the best. I still enjoy having a pistol. I also enjoy how he gets an extra grenade or like, you know, throwable slot. And he also ends up having extra ammo, which is a huge thing in Back 4 Blood, especially in the higher difficulties. So I will say this to wrap things up. When it comes to Hoffman, he has, in my opinion, the perfect balance between storyline and also the gameplay, other than Doc. I feel, in my opinion, that if you want to have a better pick in terms of the meta, you're probably going to want to pick Doc. But just because of the personality, just slightly more, Hoffman, fundamentally, at the end of the day, is better. Is he my personal favorite? He's not my favorite character, personally. But however, though, he is up there. Top 3 for sure. Is he my favorite statistically wise? No, not necessarily. I would much rather prefer to play somebody like Carly because I prefer her playstyle, and I would also enjoy some of the other characters. But I will say this. I know a lot of people like Hoffman, and he's one of the originals in my opinion. I would say, at the end of the day, he's going to be your most solid pick consistently, regardless of what it is that you're doing for, because he is just the perfect balance of pretty much everything, and that's really, at the end of the day, the perfect thing you can ask for. So what we're going to be doing, guys, is we're going to be ranking all the melee weapons that are in Back 4 Blood. And don't you worry, the ranking of normal guns will also be coming very soon in the near future. And it's funny because when it comes to this list, there will be some melee weapons on here that you may or may not even know about yet, which I'm actually really looking forward to sharing with you guys. If you guys end up enjoying today's video and you guys want to see more Back 4 Blood rankings, please end up showing your support by dropping a like, comment, and subscribe. But yeah, guys, let's rank all the melee weapons in Back 4 Blood. Alrighty, guys, so coming in at the very first spot, this might be one that you were not expecting, but this is going to be Bob's Arm. So, Bob's Arm is technically a melee weapon. It's literally just a severed hand. You get this in one chapter of one specific campaign. Now, this particular melee weapon is really just a blunt force object. You're basically slapping the crap out of the zombies, so there's really nothing lethal about it, like with a blade or a blunt force baseball bat like Holly has. It's literally just a rotten, just decrepit arm. It's really not that menacing. And even though it can kill things, and it does end up actually basically consider itself as its own melee weapon, it's pretty much just a reskin of the baseball bat. And that's really all it has going for it, is that it's just a very weak version of the baseball bat with like just a reskin on it. And you only ever end up seeing this once, so because of the fact that you see it so little, and the fact that it's basically a reskin, there really is nothing else going for it other than just being on the list. Speaking of the baseball bat, that is going to be our next spot here, which is Dottie. So Dottie, Holly's baseball bat. Why am I ending up putting this at the bottom of the main melee weapons in terms of the melee weapons of this game? Well, I will tell you, my friends, that even though the melee weapons in Back 4 Blood are all really strong in their own regards, this is a blunt object. It's not like the machete or the axe or the fire axe, where they're all sharp and have a blade. Holly's bat is just a blunt force object that only relies on the power of whoever's swinging it, which also ends up in this case being equivalent to what your card deck is. So your card deck is going to make or break the bat. And even though you can go full on Negan with this thing and basically cave heads in, it's still a baseball bat. It's not going to do nearly as much damage in comparison to a machete, or like a fire axe, or a hatchet. Those are all just naturally stronger because of the fact that they are not blunt force objects. They are sharp, they are blades, they will cut right through everything like butter. And even though I do like Holly, and even though I do like the idea of what they're trying to end up doing with Dottie, the baseball bat, it's still a baseball bat. So even though it's a cool like representation of Negan, basically through this game, it's still at the end of the day going to have to be on this spot of the list just because of how strong it is in comparison to everything else. And now we're on to the other signature melee weapon. This is going to be Evangelo's Machete. Now, Evangelo's Machete, in my opinion, is the first set of the melee weapons that you can pretty much pick up all the time. In fact, sometimes what happens is that if I'm playing Holly and I want to do a melee build, I'll just switch it to Evangelo's Machete. Because Evangelo's Machete, in my opinion, is the first melee weapon that you can really honestly carry throughout the whole entire game. It's sharp, it's ready to kill, you can slice through zombies left and right, and it's really consistent. The machete has given me really zero problems. I've not had an issue where like I can't kill things on a regular basis with this thing. I can actually kill things quite often with this thing, especially if I have the proper melee build with the cards. But if we're not counting cards, because that's, you know, not exactly the whole entire point of the video, and we're just going based off of just the machete alone, it's great. I would say that it's overall better than the baseball bat and better than Bob's arm, because it's very consistent. I would say that if you end up having Evangelo and the machete, you're pretty much going to end up having a pretty solid build just straight off the rip, because this de facto weapon, even though it's not the best in comparison to all the other characters' default weapons, it's still better than just any other melee weapon in the game currently at the moment, because when it comes to the melee weapons of this game, they are either make it or break it for you in certain scenarios. Sometimes you don't want to have a melee build, and sometimes you do. It really just depends on what you're doing. I've noticed that as you play the higher difficulties, melee is actually a pretty useful option, because you can end up gaining like health from it if you end up having certain cards. But, like I said, we're trying to make it more about the weapon itself. And when it comes to the weapon itself, I'd say the machete really can carry its own. Alrighty guys, coming in at our next spot, this is the Fire Axe. The Fire Axe is a good old trusty weapon from Left 4 Dead 2, and boy oh boy does it shine. The Fire Axe in Left 4 Dead 2 was good, but in Back 4 Blood, it's godly. This thing will destroy every zombie that's in its way, and it really got a big buff in this game. The Fire Axe is fantastic. It swings faster, it like hits like a truck. This thing will literally destroy a horde of zombies in just like a swing or two. And even though it doesn't seem like you could say that like, oh, well, this is like a pretty consistent weapon, I'd say it's pretty damn consistent. You can easily destroy hordes of zombies like this by just swinging over and over and over again. And it really doesn't seem to end up getting any weaker. And you even run out of stamina up in this game, which would normally hinder a melee weapon such as this because it's so big, because you have to use two hands. Nope. Even though you have to use two hands, and even though you can lose stamina, this thing is still god tier. This is a great melee weapon, and it just sucks that it's not the default melee weapon on a character. You have to actually pick this up. But in turn, though, that makes it more rewarding, because if you end up getting this as a default melee weapon, you would never have a reason to use anybody else, so I completely understand that. I would just say this, is that the Fire Axe is in a really good state right now. You have to pick it up by finding it, so that means it's not a guarantee, but when you find it, it's extremely rewarding. Plus also stacking this with cards, even though, like I said, we're not counting, but I'm just saying hypothetically at least. This can be like one of the best weapons you can have in the entire game, legitimately. You can make a legitimate melee build and just leave with the Fire Axe, I'm serious. The Fire Axe is an extremely good weapon. It's so much better than it was in Left 4 Dead, in my opinion. Left 4 Dead was great, but like I said, in here it's fantastic. You essentially could end up swapping this out for any melee weapon, it would automatically be better. And I would say overall, the Fire Axe is really, really solid and is deserving of being super high up on the list. Alrighty guys, now coming into the second to last spot, this is going to end up being the hatchet. Now it's debatable about whether or not that the hatchet is better than the fire axe, because I heard a lot of people really like the fire axe, and a lot of people, including myself, really like the hatchet. The way that I like to think about the hatchet versus the fire axe situation is that it really depends on your playstyle, because it's damage versus mobility. So for example, if you want to end up carrying the fire axe, you would much rather end up hitting like a truck with the risk of being slow and running out of stamina. Whereas with the hatchet, if you're like me, you like to be able to swing and, you know, hit repeatedly, even if your attacks are not as strong, because you like to just get hits down range, because somebody like a bot can follow up usually and end up still getting the kill. Now, that's really the trade-off with this, is that these weapons are extremely close. They're almost interchangeable with this spot. And I really only end up having the hatchet here just because it's down to preference, but let me know what you think in the comments down below. Alrighty guys, and coming in at our number 1 spot, funnily enough, this isn't even actually a melee weapon, it's actually a card, but this is going to end up being the combat knife. The combat knife in Back 4 Blood is absolutely the best melee weapon in the entire game, because you can always have it with you. So in Back 4 Blood, the melee system in this game is really strong. You can honestly make some pretty solid melee builds. But every one of those melee builds also do apply to the combat knife, which is also a card. So if you wanted to, you can end up leading with the combat knife as if it's a primary weapon, and it's always ready to go. You just end up hitting your hotkey and you pull it out, and you can at the same time have 2 primary guns. So you don't have to worry about replacing your secondary with, like, let's say a fire axe or a hatchet. You just always have this on you, which basically means that you're carrying essentially a third weapon. The combat knife, in my opinion, is the best melee weapon in the game, and even though it is a card, it still is one of the best weapons in all Back 4 Blood. In today's video, I'm going to be ranking all the attachments in Back 4 Blood. This is a cool video because we don't have any attachments that we can rank in Left 4 Dead, so this is a specific thing to Back 4 Blood, one of the new layers of stuff that they decided to add to the gameplay. And attachments really do truly change the way that your guns work in this game. You can have a really good gun by default, but you can have a really good gun if you have the right attachments on it. And that's just completely down to not only your RNG of what you find on the map, but also even some of the select handful of ones that you can buy out of the vendor at random. So that's what we're going to be ranking here today. There's going to be in total 19 attachments in the game as of I'm making this video. So if attachments get added into the game later on throughout, you know, the updates and stuff like that throughout the years. But yeah, we're going to be trying to rank the attachments from worst to best in my humble opinion. But I did decide to take the community's input and try to do the best that I could in terms of what I think you guys would also agree with as well. So please in the comments feel free to let me know if you guys agree or disagree with this list and why. But anyways guys, let's rank all the attachments in Back 4 Blood. Alrighty guys, so coming in at the very first spot, and I feel like a lot of you guys are agreeing with me on this one, because this is going to end up being the sniper scope, or the high zoom scope. Now, keep in mind, when I say that I don't like this attachment, I'm not saying that it's bad. No attachment really, honestly, in Back 4 Blood is bad. I really don't mind them. It's just that the problem is that I have 2 main pet peeves with this scope. Is that number 1 is that it's really frustrating to no end how that this attachment can sometimes obscure your view significantly unless you're aiming down sights with it. And the second thing that's also annoying is that you really can't do anything if you pick this up on accident, because you could put a sniper scope on anything, which makes the gameplay creative, and I like that. But I really don't like it how that you can't swap out an attachment unless you have another attachment. I just wish that in the menu I could go in and add an attachment or remove it by choice. Why is it that if I have, like, let's say a gun with an iron sight and I see a sight and then I don't realize it's a sniper scope and I pick it up, why can I not take it off and just, like, leave it off and go back to the iron sights? Why is it that I have to find some sort of other optical sight to be able to end up going to a better optic? I don't like the idea that if I pick up an attachment, it's essentially permanent unless I'm willing to switch it. So that's one of my main pet peeves, is the fact that I can't switch them out, and really this only fits for sniper rifles. Like, it blocks your view unless you're using it for the aim down sights purpose, so it really only applies to the sniper rifles. And I really don't think that this scope is really that good. It's only really good for, like, a select handful of guns out of the whole entire library. And I just don't really prefer to snipe. I mean, you can snipe in this game. The snipers are definitely useful. I like the Barrett. I like, you know, the other sniper rifles like the Ranch rifle and stuff like that. But really, I much rather would prefer to have an assault rifle, an SMG, hell, even a shotgun. And a sniper rifle scope does not go well on these guns. Can you imagine going around with a sniper rifle scope on, like, let's say a revolver or a shotgun? How silly that would look. It's just unpractical. It never was meant to be like that in the first place, but you can do it. So the idea is that it basically forces you to mix up the gameplay, but because of the fact that the way the attachment system is flawed right now, you can't just take something off, and just is really inconvenient, I really just have to say that this scope has got to be at the bottom of the list, because really, it's only circumstantial, and other than that, it really doesn't serve you as an attachment. Alrighty guys, now coming in at our next spot, this is going to be one of these stock attachments, and this is going to end up being the competition stock. Now the competition stock, what it does is that ends up giving you plus 20% aim down sight speed, but that's really it. And that's the thing, is that it's such a simple attachment. The attachments are really unique because they're not only done by rarity, but they're also done by their functions, because there's really only 4 attachments essentially in this game. They're all kind of like subcategories or variants of each other's. There's magazines, there's barrels, there's going to end up being optical sights, and then there's going to be stocks. And that's why you have those, according silhouettes underneath of your guns. Now, there is subcategories such as extended mags and fast mags, or a red dot sight versus an ACOG sight, or a suppressor versus a long barrel, and, like, let's say, a laser sight versus a compensator, Now, all of these are good in their own ways, and some are, decent in some other ones. But now you also have an issue where some of them are green level attachments, which basically means that they're the weakest versions of themselves. And then there's some that are gold, the huge jump, where they're basically the legendary god tier version of said attachments. So honestly, what's going to happen is that a lot of these initial attachments in the beginning, guys, are mostly going to end up being greens if they have a better version of it later on down the line. If the attachment is just by itself and there's nothing else like it, then it will end up being higher up on the list. But if there's like a green mag versus a gold mag, the gold mag will inevitably be higher, and that's kind of the same thing with these stocks. The competition stock is just 20% increase in aim down sights, so just in comparison to everything else, it really is just not that good. However, though, it at least does serve you and is at least worth picking up. Alrighty guys, so now we are on to the lightweight stock. Now for the lightweight stock, what this ends up giving you is it gives you a 5% increase to your move speed. Now, when it comes to a stock, you really want it to benefit you in terms of your speed. You want it to make it so that way you can aim down sights quicker, strafe quicker, overall just be quicker. Because when you have an attachment that basically gives you nothing but penalties, you don't want that. And I feel like that movement speed is critical to something that would give you something such as kind of like a slowdown effect, like an LMG or an assault rifle where it's heavy and makes you slow, and the attachment kind of like reverses that effect. So not only do you get the initial damage of the gun, because that's probably what you get these high-powered guns for, it's heavy versus strong. Basically the attachment is meant to negate the one penalty, so now it's strong and fast, and that's kind of what the lightweight stock does. And that's just why it goes up higher on the list, in my opinion, is because it makes it that way LMGs and assault rifles function much better. Alright, now we're on to another stock again. This is the tactical stock. So this gives you 10% increase to your overall handling. And in my opinion, handling for a gun is one of the more critical, I guess you could say, attachment bonuses that you get. Because when it comes to something, what I would normally use, this is kind of where I'm getting more into like my bias type of beliefs. I'm not necessarily thinking of the community part of the list, but I use a lot of the assault rifles in this game. I love the AK-47, I love the M4, stuff like that. If I end up picking up this stock, I feel reassured knowing that I can end up basically moving this thing quicker. I treat it a lot like an SMG this way when I end up getting this bonus. And I would say that if this is something that you're going to put on, like, let's say, an SMG or a shotgun that doesn't exactly need it, you might not notice the benefit, but eventually, what's going to happen is when we're going to be ranking all the guns in Back 4 Blood, you're going to notice how that a lot of the guns really need this attachment, or just some form of this attachment to really fundamentally be at its best. And probably what's going to end up happening is I'm probably going to be ranking the guns next, just to prove this point. But I would say overall, if you can end up making so that way your gun, and makes it where you can basically handle it better, it doesn't end up jolting around and like you have to worry about being slow and obnoxious. If you can feel like the gun's a part of you, that's really when you're winning at the end of the day. Alrighty guys, so now we're finally off the stocks here for a second. We are now onto another optical sight. This is the hollow sight. So the hollow sight is going to end up being kind of like a more chunkier, thicker ACOG sight. And the reason why I don't exactly care for it in comparison to the red dot or the ACOG is because it zooms in too much. It's not like the sniper scope where it's obnoxious, but it still zooms in an uncomfortable amount, and I would much rather pick up the red dot or the ACOG, and debatably, depending on the gun, I'd rather just not have an attachment at all for the optic. And you once again run into the problem where, if you have an iron sight gun and you pick this up on accident, until you find another sight, you can't turn this off. You can't remove it in the attachments menu. It's stuck there. Turtle Rock, I beg of you, please end up making it where we can take the attachments on our guns on and off at command. Not where we have to swap them out. If I want to be able to have an iron sight AK again because I picked up a sniper rifle scope and I didn't want to, please let me do so. Please and thank you. Alright, now we've got the long barrel. Now for the long barrel, it's interesting. This is a attachment that can be extremely good or kind of fundamentally useless. Not bad, but just not practical and therefore kind of useless to you. If you were to use this on, like, let's say something like an SMG or especially a shotgun, this attachment is wonderful. It makes it so that way, basically, you're using your gun as if it's like a miniature sniper rifle, it feels sometimes. Because you're increasing your effective range by 25%. A quarter of the way there as an increase. It's ridiculous. You're basically making a shotgun have the range of a slug, even though it's like a buckshot, for example. Just as an example, just hypothetically. Now, the thing is that if you don't use a shotgun, or if you don't use an SMG, this really doesn't serve you. Because, like, let's say you use the assault rifles, or the sniper rifles, or the LMGs. You don't need to have a problem fixed with, like, you know, this attachment. You don't need to necessarily be like, hey, I'm not getting a lot of, you know, damage down range. I need to put on a long barrel. Really, that's only useful if you're having, like, something that has bad range. So, when you're using an LMG or a sniper rifle or an assault rifle, you want to use things like the suppressor and the compensator because they're more fitting, even though the long barrel still can't help you. It is better than nothing, but you're not going to keep it, unless you're using a certain build. So that's kind of the issue you're running into. That's kind of like the trade-off with this attachment. All the other attachments we covered prior, even up to now, they're all still useful, but they all have their caveats where there's definitely just attachments that are overall just better because they're either gold versions or they just serve a better purpose overall. Alrighty guys, so now we're back to the stocks again. We're at the light tactical stock. This is the first golden stock attachment that we got here. And the main reason why that's so high up on the list is because it literally is deserving of it just because of the fact that it's gold. When it ends up being a gold attachment, it usually ends up having more abilities, and that is very prominent with this one because you get 10 plus mobility, but you also get 16 plus on handling. And so therefore, this automatically beats the other prior stocks just because it's basically a combo. You get a buy one, get one free in terms of power-ups with this attachment, and it's really cool because you can either buy this or you can find it by chance. But the thing is that's always available to you. It's not like it's something pre-attached to a gun. It's not like it's something that's just completely impossible to find. A gold attachment is very easy to get as long as you know how to play the game properly. And everything stacks. If you play the game in a row, you'll eventually find this. I doubt, with checking the vendor and having enough copper and checking everywhere, even with your teammates being able to hook you up with a gun that might have this attachment already, there is zero possibility you'll go through the whole campaign and not find this. You will essentially turn anything into an SMG. You'll turn an LMG into an SMG with this stock. Well, not completely, but it will feel like it for a brief moment in time. I'll just say that. Alrighty guys, so coming in at our next spot, this is the Extended Plus P Mag. This gives you plus 50 magazine size and also plus 10 bullet damage. Now basically what this does, that essentially gives you stopping power rounds and 50% more of them. And it's just ridiculous, man. So if you want to end up having a gun be stronger and buff it some way, pick up this attachment. You basically are making any gun 10% stronger. So if you have a really weak build and you're trying to like do some sort of challenge, or if you generally are just being unlucky with attachments, if you find this attachment, that should fix all of your worries. Alrighty guys, so I have all the attachments in the game. The plus P mags are basically identical to each other. They, once again, both have 10 plus bullet damage. But however, though, the fast mag version only gives you a 30+% increase to your reload speed, rather than basically giving you the 50+% in terms of your ammo. Now, yes, the percentage is lower, being only at 30 versus 50, but in my opinion, I think that that's fine, just solely because of the fact that you're reloading quicker, and in my opinion, that's more important than having more ammo in a given clip. Because once you run out, you still have to reload the exact same speed, and there's no way around that. But if you can end up reloading that gun quicker, it's definitely a lot more better. In my opinion, if I'm in a situation, I'd rather would reload quicker than just try to end up hitting a couple shots and then be stuck doing a longer reload, in my opinion. Alrighty guys, so next on the list is the Extended AP Magazine. Now for the Extended AP Magazine, this is going to end up be a increase to your firepower. First of all, it's going to end up giving you plus 10 to your firepower. Overall, your gun's just stronger now. And in addition to that, since it's an extended mag, you get 50 plus magazine size, which is really helpful in the higher difficulties when your ammo is very critical to your survival. You need to be able to spray zombies sometimes till no holds bar, and if you got interrupted because of a reload, man, that tall boy might close the gap and then you are donezo. So having an extended mag, it might just save your life. Alright, now we're starting to get to the really, really good attachments. So now coming in at our next spot, this is the Fast Mag AP Mag. Now, with the Fast AP Mag is that this ends up giving you 30 plus reload speed, just by default being a Fast Mag. But in addition to that, it gives you 100% bullet penetration. This means that any gun, basically, can go through any wall. And you literally don't have to worry about the walls interfering with your kills ever again. If you need to kill something, like let's say that behind one of the doors is going to end up being an ogre, oh, you just shoot through it. Oh, if you also have got like a car that's, you know, got a tall boy on the other side or a hawker dancing around, you can also do that too. No zombie is safe with this mag on. The mag basically makes your gun have built-in FMJ to the fullest degree. And that's in addition to the fact that it's a fast mag. It's basically 2 attachments in one. And now you're starting to understand why attachments are super critical to this game. Alrighty guys, now we have an attachment that's literally a combo of these last two. This is the Extended Fast Mag. The Extended Fast Mag gives you 50 plus magazine size and 31% to your reload speed. So it is a little bit more of an extended mag than it is a fast mag, which personally I would prefer to have it be the other way around. I'd much rather, like, I'm a big fan of fast mags over extended mags in my opinion. And I personally really think this attachment is good, although it could be a little bit better if the fast part of the mag was also at 50, but then again though, if it was 50-50, it might be a weird thing with the balance. But overall, having a fast extended mag is extremely beneficial, and it's really only just nothing but good. Now, keep in mind is that this isn't the best magazine because it's still yet to come, but I definitely think this is worth picking up if you find it in your inventory. Alrighty guys, so for our next magazine, or our next attachment here, this is going to end up being another extended mag, and this is going to be the Extended HP Mag. This gives you 10 plus firepower and 50% magazine size, and overall this is probably basically the best version of the magazine is the HP Mags, which is why the direct follow-up is going to end up being the Fast Mag version of this, although for different reasons, because the Fast Mag version of the HP Mag has different, like, little bonuses that it gives you. The reason why, in my opinion, I think that the Fast HP Mag is the best magazine in the entire game is because of one reason and one reason only. Bullet stumble. You get 30 plus reload speed, but you get 50% bullet stumble. What do I mean by this? Bullet stumble basically means that the enemies essentially flinch on you. They freak out. When you shoot them, there's brief periods of time where they can't fight back, and you're basically concussing them. And this is extremely beneficial to you in the higher difficulties. If you're playing on Veteran or especially Nightmare, and you got a tall boy charging you, sometimes hordes of tall boys charging you, you need to be able to end up closing the gap, man, and you got to keep them as far away from you as possible, and you got to make sure that they die by the time they get to you. So if you want to end up doing that, you want to be able to stun them. And one of the ways you can do that is with this fast HP mag, because just naturally shooting them can possibly give you a window where they flinch and get them to back off, rather than just them end like just chasing you to the ends of the earth. Because that's sometimes what it feels like with the tall boys. Sometimes you feels like you cannot get away from them, and this mag helps a lot. Alrighty guys, we are down to the final stock attachment. This is the light competition stock. This gives you 10 plus mobility and 16 plus in handling. Basically the main two things that you want in a stock. It is at gold level for a reason. You're going to be able to move quicker, you're going to be able to handle your gun much smoother, and basically any single gun that you're basically forced to aim down sights with, you know, because you can't remove the attachments in this game. Basically, you're going to make it so that way you're maximizing your situation here. So in my opinion, this is the best stock in the game, and basically it allows you to excel in many ways. Alright guys, now we are on to an attachment that is going to benefit any of my console viewers, because this is the compensator. The compensator gives you not only a 15 plus move speed while firing, but also 20% plus recoil control. This is really big if you have a gun that has basically a stock that gets in front of your face all the time because of its gun kick, or basically just decides to have a seizure and kick like a mule, because many guns in this game all have their different traits, and some, because they're powerful in one area, they suck at recoil. This is going to minimize your amount of recoil by a lot. And when it comes to aim down sights in this game, if you're on a mouse and keyboard, you're more likely to be able to control your aim better, but if you're on console where you're stuck with the controller and you're having to rely on aim assist sometimes might be screwy with you and actually mess up your recoil because it's locking onto the wrong things. So if you play with a controller, I've heard this from my buddy Jake and pretty much all my friends because they all play the Game Pass for Xbox's version of this game. If you are playing and you have the choice of a barrel, if you can't pick something else that's coming up later on the list, you want to end up picking the compensator. It will always benefit you, make it so that way you can end up having pretty much no recoil, and if you stack this with cards, if you stack this with good teamwork, you are set, my friend. Alright guys, we're super close to the very end. We actually only have a select handful of attachments left. And by the way, just for something fun, I thought I would end up bringing this back. There was one time in a random Left 4 Dead ranking episode where I was ranking the maps. I said something along the lines of being like, if you watch this far into the video, comment 47 minutes, which was just a random part in the commentary, just to let me know how far in the video you guys watched. So I wanted to do something similar. So in the comment section down below, please comment 21 minutes if you guys have watched this far into the video and you guys have ended up enjoying. I really love to see who's watched all the way up until this point, and shout out to you if you have. Alrighty guys, coming in for our next spot, this is the laser sight. The laser sight is really good, and not only is it really good, it's one of my personal favorites. Because the laser sight is not necessarily something that is needed, but it definitely makes you stronger, significantly so. So when Back 4 Blood introduced the idea of aiming down sights, I was worried that as a Left 4 Dead fan, because we were always used to hipfire back in the day, that because you're able to aim down sights, that basically hipfire would be essentially rendered useless. However, though, it's not really the case. You can hipfire pretty damn well in this game, just like any normal game. You can actually aim down sights and hipfire, and you'll still get by pretty well. You can actually compete with a guy that's aiming down sights if you hipfire, especially if you got the laser sight, because if you crouch and have a laser sight, oh boy, are you really accurate. Your hipfire spread becomes basically like as if you have a laser sight literally in real life. It actually functions like a legitimate laser. Your accuracy hip firing with a fictional laser is pinpoint accurate. It's like, I can't even make this up. I love this attachment. It always has benefited me. And if you have to pick something to shove on your gun, pick the laser sight and never take it off. And if any of that didn't seal the deal, just know that you get 10 plus accuracy. That'll be a little cherry on top. Alrighty guys, now we have got the ACOG sight. The ACOG sight, in my opinion, is one of the best sights in all of Back 4 Blood, because it's the one sight that I first of all want to say is that it doesn't obscure your vision, not nearly as badly as the other two. Plus also as well is that a optic of some kind is definitely useful in this game. You can get by without one, but you most certainly are going to want one. because obviously you want to end up having at least one of everything. You want to end up having a barrel attachment, you want to have a mag attachment, you want to have a scope of some kind, and you want to have a stock. And out of all of these, in my opinion, I feel like the most critical one is probably going to end up being, honestly, the optic sight. You need to be pinpoint accurate in this game, and you can get by with just the default gun damage. You don't need to have a fancy mag that gives you stumble. You don't need to have a suppressor to be off the radar. You don't need to have a stock that makes it that way you can strafe easier, but you really need to make sure that your just raw accuracy is on point. And what better way to do that than to have an aim down sights that isn't obscured by some crappy random iron sight, and instead just have an optic such as the ACOG. Speaking of aim down sights and also fellow optical attachments, let's move on to the one right after the ACOG, and this is going to end up being the red dot sight. The red dot sight is literally just the exact same thing that I just mentioned, is that it's a optical sight that barely obscures your vision, makes you much more accurate, and overall it's just a classic red dot sight. It's just very simple and straightforward. I really don't feel like there's not much to be said, other than the fact that it's just one of the best attachments in all of the game. But guys, coming in at the #1 spot for the best attachment in all of Back 4 Blood, this is going to end up being the silencer. Now, it's funny. I thought that out of every single attachment in this game, I would put the silencer at, like, dead last. I'm just being honest. When I initially have, like looked at the attachments of this game, I was thinking to myself being like, what honest good use could a suppressor be in this game? You know, coming from Left 4 Dead, like, where basically zombies attack you 24/7, and they basically know where you are all the time, how is a suppressor going to benefit me? Does it keep me off the radar? Do the zombies just genuinely not hear me coming? To answer that question, yeah. That's literally all this does. It's funny. You think that that would be kind of like, you know, what it would be obviously meant for, but coming from, like, a whole bunch of different FPS games, normally whenever you're playing against zombies and you have a suppressor of some kind, at least the games I play, the suppressor doesn't mean jack crap. The suppressor is just normally just something there to look cool, make it look fancy, and it never would actually serve its purpose. In Back 4 Blood, if you run the suppressor, it actually works. If you end up using it, the zombies don't hear you unless you deliberately shoot them, or you can, like, basically have, like, the bullets in their line of sight. Like, if they see, like, a bullet, like, zip by them, or you barely brush them, of course, then they're gonna notice. But if you end up having, like, a set of zombies, like, in ones, and then you just take them out one at a time, especially if you're quick about it, the suppressor makes it so that way you're off the radar. The zombies will never know you're there. And if you can be quick about it, if you can be snappy, if you can be mobile, and you can be lethal, you are extremely going to be better off. Like, out of all these attachments, this is, in my opinion, one of the crutch ones, especially in the higher difficulties. If you're playing something like Nightmare, you cannot afford to get swarmed. You cannot afford to have the zombies gangbang you. You need to be quiet. You need to be stealthy. And you most certainly need the suppressor. Guys, in today's video, we are going to be ranking all the weapons in Back 4 Blood. This video I'm really excited to share with you guys because when I did this for Left 4 Dead, this was the best ranking out of all of them. So I'm hoping that this is the case for the Back 4 Blood ranking series, and hopefully this will be the best ranking one video that we have yet. Now guys, before we do begin officially with the ranking, I just wanted to mention 3 main things just really quickly. Is that, #1, when it comes to these specific rankings, this is going to be my best attempt at a mixture of my own opinion / what I think that you guys would want, the community's opinion. Because I know that not all of us are going to have the exact same favorite guns or weapons, and I took that into account. I always normally try to do that with my ranking videos anyways. So if you personally have your own separate list, please put it down below in the comment section. I really want to see what your guys' favorite weapons are, so that way we can compare and contrast and truly see what the best guns are in the game, truly. Second thing I also wanted to mention just as well is that if you guys just simply happen to enjoy this video, please definitely leave a like at the end if you do end up enjoying it. I understand the video just got started, so if you enjoy at the end, please definitely do so. I'd forever be grateful, my friend. And then lastly, is when it comes to this game, it is still getting updated. In fact, there's actually going to be a Gigundo patch actually coming out with the Christmas update in literally like the day after that this video goes live. So these rankings might not even make sense like 24 hours later because of the fact that they could tweak some things around. But keep in mind that this is before the December patch, and I made this with the intent of whatever the current game stats were at that time. So just sit back, relax guys, and let's end up talking about what the best guns are in Back 4 Blood. Alrighty guys, so this is our very first spot. This is going to end up being the worst gun in my opinion in all Back 4 Blood. And I'm almost positive all of you guys are going to unanimously agree with me when I say this. But this is going to end up being the double barrel, which is Mom's main secondary themed gun. The double barrel in Back 4 Blood is absolute trash. This thing is terrible. And there's two main reasons why, and they're so stupid of reasons. But hear me out. I'm gonna give you guys an example, right? Just to tell you guys how little this makes sense. You would think that because this is a shotgun that this thing would kick like a truck, especially since the fact that it's basically a one-shot machine. You shoot once and then you have to instantly reload. So you think that, hey, if this thing is going to be reloading every, 1 second, this thing should literally be one of the strongest guns in the game. And unfortunately, that is not the case. The best thing that this thing can do is just the one-shots on the commons. It doesn't one-shot the special infected unless you're basically shoving this right into their face, and they have to have no armor, basically be on recruit difficulty, and probably shot already a few times prior to you shooting them with this thing. And secondly also as well is that this thing just is terrible with its bullet spread. Absolutely terrible. I understand that you're going to be more accurate when you aim down sights with a gun, no matter what gun it is. But I will tell you this, is that it literally is the worst gun in terms of accuracy ever. I swear to God, man. If you're literally not shooting the gun at point-blank range, even if you aim down sights, this thing does not end up killing. I swear to God, anything that's not the most bare-bones common zombie will end up not getting one-shot. And because you have to reload this thing so freaking often, it literally makes it useless. It doesn't matter if you end up giving it the best cards and the best attachments in the world. This thing is absolutely trash. And if you're playing as Mom, do not keep this thing. It is not worth your time. I really want to give every single gun and every single just item in general a chance in any game I play so I can give the proper feedback. And I will just tell you this, is that for the amount of time that I have played on Mom and used this double barrel, I can tell you without a single doubt in my mind that this is one of the worst guns in all of Back 4 Blood. It's one of the worst guns you can use to just defend yourself, period. If you weren't even using this against the zombies, I wouldn't even recommend this in the 1v1 pit in Fort Hope. That's how bad this thing is. It's terrible at killing zombies. It's certainly terrible at killing people. This thing is not worth your time whatsoever. Alrighty guys, now that I'm done roasting the ever-living crap out of Mom's double barrel, let's move on to a gun that's not nearly as bad, just given for the fact of what type of gun it is. This is going to end up being the M1911 pistol, or in this case, Hoffman's main signature weapon. Now, the M1911 I'm not going to nearly rip on as much as Mom's double barrel, because when it comes to Mom's double barrel, that thing is a shotgun, and for the way that that thing is built, you end up thinking that would be kind of like a rock, paper, scissors logic, where it's like one thing sucks because it gets beaten out by this, but you would think in turn that if you go down the line, it excels in one other good area and can counteract this type of inconvenience. Nope, it doesn't. Now, when it comes to the M1911, this thing is much better than Mom's double barrel because it actually excels in some areas. Even though it is a dinky little pistol and is technically the starting pistol, it's still a really good gun. The reason why it's a good gun is just because it actually functions like basically what a real M1911 would be like. It's not something that you lead with as a primary, but however though, it's not going to be completely useless to you. It can still one-shot the normal common zombie when you need it to, because the way that Back 4 Blood works, we all know, the zombies are strong, but the guns are also strong. So if you build your guns right, you can basically make these things pretty much one-shot the commons, and pretty decent on the infected with armor, or even the specials sometimes. And the M1911 does that just fine. If you could end up having, like, a suppressor, or like maybe even like some certain cards, but I am trying to stay away from the cards just because that's kind of like a separate thing on its own. I'm trying to rank the gun just based off of, the gun itself and maybe the attachments just because that kind of goes hand in hand with it. But the gun itself is overall just really good. It's accurate, it's not like it has an ammo problem, it actually functions the way it should, it excels at range, it excels up close. Overall, the M1911, it's not a, a perfect gun by any means, but it's actually a viable weapon. And I would definitely recommend picking it up if you're just looking for something to have as a long-range secondary. Alrighty guys, so now coming in at the next spot here, I wanted to clarify a little bit of stuff here, because technically they're labeled as separate guns, but in my opinion, I'm just going to put these together because it's just much easier to rank them this way because it's less confusing. Plus also the thing that separates them essentially is basically like a built-in attachment that's not an attachment. They just decided to be like, hey, let's make these separate guns. So I'm going to explain this. So the next gun that we're going to be ranking here, this is going to end up being the M9 pistol, Doc's main secondary weapon. Now, this has a single fire version and a burst fire version, and they're labeled as two separate guns, which I think is a little bit silly, because technically a burst fire version of this gun could be really honestly just an attachment. It didn't need to be a separate gun in this case, but they decided to go that route anyways. So even though these are technically the, it's like separate guns, but they're the same gun at the same time, I'm just going to make it easier and just say they're the same gun. Because even on the stats, they're labeled the exact same. And I think it's just unnecessarily complicated. So I'm just going to say is that the M9 basically is the exact same version of what the M1911 is. And basically it's just repurposed as another gun. Even the, the semi-auto version and the burst version. But I will just say this is that it's basically like the M1911. It's just reskinned essentially and has two versions for some reason. But overall, it's still a very solid pistol. Alrighty guys, coming in at the next spot here, this is going to end up being the Glock. Now this is Walker's main secondary, and the Glock in my opinion is where we're starting to get into the pretty solid guns, because the Glock has a single fire version and also has a fully automatic version, believe it or not. And both are good. Now, technically, they're separate guns again, and the Glock does have different stats for the full auto, unlike the, the M9, where the burst has the identical stats of the single fire one, which I think is a little bit silly. But regardless, I'm still going to classify them the same anyways, and just say, the Glock, regardless if there's two versions. The Glock is like halfway in terms of the secondary weapons. In my opinion, it's better than Bomb's double barrel, and it's also better than the M9, but it's not quite as good as the up-and-coming secondaries that'll be later throughout the list. It's just a good pistol, it's a little bit stronger than the last two guns, and overall much more versatile, especially since the fact that there is a fully auto version of this thing. And regardless if it's the fully auto or the single, it's still a really great gun because it hits like a truck. It has really good ammo. It's really just overall a great pistol with like no recoil, great damage, great customization and everything. And overall, it's really good in my humble opinion. Alrighty guys, so coming in at the next spot, this is going to end up being one of the melee weapons. And no, I will not be ranking all the melee weapons the exact same way that I did my Left 4 Dead ranking video, where I said they're essentially all the same, because I will not make that same mistake twice. But no, yeah, trust me, the Left 4 Dead secondaries, they were all definitely different apart from each other, even the melee weapons. So for the Back 4 Blood melee weapons, I am going to give them their own individual spots. And for the next spot, this is going to end up being the first melee weapon I want to put up on the list, which is going to be Holly's baseball bat. The baseball bat, in my opinion, is the weakest of all the melee weapons in the game, because right now there is 4. And when it comes to the bat, the main thing that just makes it not necessarily one of the best is because it's the only melee weapon in the game that's a blunt object. It's not pointy, it's not sharp, and therefore it doesn't end up defending you nearly as well. Your main caveat to the fact that you're running the bat is the fact that you can't do nearly as much damage. You do get like a pretty good swing across, a given area, and you can end up hitting a lot of zombies, but it's not going to kill them all necessarily in that given shot. You may like stun them or weaken them, but that's really all you can end up getting. And in my humble opinion, the only thing that really is a benefit to you is the fact that this thing is essentially unlimited. Yes, you can have a unlimited ammo card for the secondaries, but the one caveat I want to end up putting in this video is I'm not going to count the cards. I'm trying my best to only rank the guns based off their base form or an attachment, because attachments are kind of a hand-in-hand thing, and I will let that slide, but cards I will not. That's a separate thing in their own entirety. And so therefore, I'm not going to say the pistols are unlimited in this ranking, so therefore the melee weapons are the ones that excel in that regard. And if you're playing on a Veteran or Nightmare, this can also be very beneficial to you, because essentially you'll always have something to defend yourself, because if you're in a situation where you have to rely on basically keeping the zombies away when you're out of ammo, you're either down to a melee weapon or cards, which can give you things like a combat knife. But then again, though, that's a card, and I'm not going to count that one. So actually, in today's video, the combat knife's just not in here. If it was going to be in here, it would probably be the best melee weapon, like just when we eventually get to that spot down the list. So whatever the top melee weapon is in this list, just imagine the knife just shortly thereafter, and that's where it would have been. But we're not going to put it in here because that's a card. In my humble opinion, the baseball bat's good, it's just not great. Alrighty guys, we got another melee weapon up here on the list, and this is going to be Evangelo's machete. Now, unlike Left 4 Dead, the machete in this game, in my opinion, I don't necessarily think is the best. The machete is not necessarily a bad melee weapon, but it's not the best, because, like I said, there's only 4, and the other 2 are just much better than it. I think that the main reason why that's the case is just because that this is one of the default guns or the spawn guns, because if you pick Evangelo, he'll give this to you by default, and if you also end up playing a lot of the time, you'll just find this sometimes like in spawn or right outside of spawn. This is just kind of spawned naturally as if it's a starter gun, because even though there really is no true starting gun air quote in this game, there is some that spawn in more frequently than the others because they're not necessarily as air quote good. Because, in my opinion, I think that all the guns are very good in this game, and they all have a deserving spot on this list. And, of course, some are going to be naturally better than others. But you know what I mean when I say starting guns or starting melee weapons? They're basically just stuff that spawns in more frequently because something about them is just not as good as the others. And for the machete, I just feel like that's just the case. The machete is a good melee weapon. It will help you survive. It definitely beats out Holly's bat because it's not a blunt object. But however, though, is that despite it being a sharp object, all it really does is basically the exact same things, with just slightly more damage. And in my opinion, that's really nothing much other than just giving it maybe just one more spot above the bat. Alrighty guys, another melee weapon. This is the Fire Axe. The Fire Axe, in my opinion, other than of course the hatchet, which will just be later on shortly here in the video, the Fire Axe is one of the best melee weapons of the game because this is where you start to get into the really big beefy boys. The Fire Axe really got a buff, and I really think that the Fire Axe is much better in this game than the Left 4 Dead Fire Axe. The Fire Axe in Left 4 Dead was really great. It was one of the best melee weapons. But in Back 4 Blood, it really is good. Now, this is the only other melee weapon other than Holly's bat that you need to have 2 hands to swing, which therefore makes it one of the slower ones. But in my opinion, the amount of damage and consistency that the Fire Axe does, oh boy, it's worth it. Because even though it's slower than the machete and the hatchet, it's still really, really good. The thing's blade is so sharp it can cut through basically any zombie you can think of. I've seen some armored zombies that can't defend themselves against this thing. And overall, in my opinion, the only reason why it's just not number 1 is just because the hatchet, of course, which you guys know is the only melee weapon left on the list, is going to be inevitably better. But we will get to that here shortly. In my opinion, I think that this is the way to rank the Fire Axe, is that it may not be the best melee weapon, but overall, as a just good weapon in general, it's definitely really damn good, and you don't want to screw with it. Alrighty guys, and next on the list, this is the last melee weapon. It's the hatchet. The reason why the hatchet is the best melee weapon, once again, just like it was in the ranking melee weapons list, is just because it's the exact same reasons as last time. Basically, this is the best of kind of everything. Even though the hatchet doesn't necessarily excel in one particular thing, it's more rather just it's kind of good at everything. It's got the ability to run around really quickly because it's a one-handed melee weapon, so you're really quick and you can, be able to swing really, really fast. Now, it also, at the same time, has a really sharp blade, just like the Fire Axe, and does a lot of damage. Now, it doesn't necessarily hit as strong as the Fire Axe, but however, though, because it's quick, you can actually be able to swing so fast that even if you're not necessarily getting a one-shot kill, your follow-up is actually be able to make it where it's feeling like a one-shot kill because you're killing the zombies still extremely quick. And also, when it just comes to comparing it to the other melee weapons like the baseball bat, the machete, and the Fire Axe, I feel like this thing is just overall the most consistent out of all of them. The baseball bat, really good swinging around and getting a lot of zombies in one given hit because of its, its swinging pattern. That's what it excels at. The machete, it's basically the exact same thing, but sharper. The Fire Axe, it overall is just the strongest in terms of its pure power, but the hatchet is kind of one of everything. It's really light, so it's quick. It's really sharp, so even if you don't get necessarily a one-shot kill, you can easily get a two-shot kill. And overall, its pattern of swinging is pretty fair, I'd say. And I just say is that that's what makes the hatchet the best, is that it's just kind of a little bit of good at everything. Alrighty guys, now we're back to the pistols. This is going to end up being the 357 Magnum next. This is the only revolver that is in the game currently, but however though, despite that, it does end up excelling in quite a lot of areas. Most notably is that it's like the second strongest secondary in all of the game, just because this thing has a lot of damage. You know, even though it only has so many shots and you do have to end up reloading it on a pretty consistent basis, it's still really good. Despite it being a revolver and not clip-fed, it really is strong. And the fact that it can one-shot basically every single zombie, it's really, really good. It's Jim's default weapon, and that makes Jim honestly worth running sometimes is just for this gun. Is if you want to have this gun, and you don't want to have to go finding it on the ground, you want to run Jim, which really is the only purpose of running Jim, in my opinion. Jim is the least used and really the least strongest survivor in all Back 4 Blood. So having one of the best secondaries tied to him personally makes it kind of a win-win situation, because it makes you run a character that you probably wouldn't otherwise run. And overall, it's just a way you can get the thing off spawn and not have to find it. So I would say that the 357, even though it doesn't spawn in nearly as often, the one caveat is that you can end up at least running Jim to get it, which is nice. So I would say is that this thing is good, but overall, you wouldn't want to expect to see it on a regular basis just because its spawn rate is not necessarily the highest. And overall, there also is just 2 more secondaries that are a little bit better than that, in my opinion. Alrighty guys, so coming in at the very first primary weapon spot, this is the TAC shotgun. This thing, in my humble opinion, is the worst of the primary weapons in all of Back 4 Blood, because the main thing that sucks about this thing is its ammo. The default magazine size, or in this case the default amount of shells that you can have in the shotgun at a given time without attachments, is 3. You can fit more in the revolver than you can in the default shotgun here. This thing spawns in as Hoffman's default primary weapon, which I understand because it's a default weapon that might not necessarily be, you know, the best gun out there. But there's some people that spawn in with better guns. In my opinion, there's actually one gun in particular that's so good already as it is, and it also helps that it's one of the default guns for the characters. You'll see it later on at the very, very end of the list, but some of the best guns are default guns for the characters. So Hoffman's gun being terrible is honestly not an excuse. And in my opinion, I think that this thing really needs an ammo buff. Without an extended mags, having only 3 shots in it at a given time before you gotta reload is stupid. It makes the shotgun not worth running. You basically have to have the extended mag to make it worth it. And even then, it barely extends the mag. It basically extends it by a bullet or 2. And in my opinion, this thing is honestly just not that good. In my opinion, I felt like it was better in the beta, and maybe that might have been just because we only had so many guns in the beta, but the gun just naturally felt stronger. I can't explain it, but I feel like that the guns changed from the beta. Like, for example, I thought that Mom's double barrel was actually good in the beta, but as the game came out, it wasn't the case. Same thing with this shotgun. In my opinion, I think that this thing doesn't excel in really anything, and overall, it's just only a gun to keep if you're just stuck with it and you don't have anything else. Alrighty guys, and for the next spot here, this is going to be the very first sniper rifle, and this is the Barrett 50 cal. Now the Barrett 50 cal is not exactly a bad gun, but it's just an inconvenient gun. Because Back 4 Blood, we all know how this game works. It's like you walk out of the spawn, you have a couple of zombies, you work your way up, and then eventually after a while, there's at some point in the game, which I like to call basically the cluster F part of the story, where basically the corruption cards eventually stack so badly that you can't help but basically be surrounded. Now, the Barrett 50 cal in this game is probably one of, if not the strongest hitting gun in the whole entire game. It is extremely strong, and its one-shot range is ridiculous. You can take out basically anything. The problem is with it is that it's a bolt. It's not a semi-auto, it is a bolt in this game. Which therefore means every single shot you will have to reprime and load in another round every time you want to shoot it. That basically kills the gun for me. In my humble opinion, the gun primes way too slow, and it really doesn't make it worth using. Because it's not like in this game you can control the zombies being away from you. It's not like you can have them at a distance and pop them safely. They will eventually surround you no matter how hard you try, they are going to at some point ram you in the butt if you don't have the ability to basically like manipulate the game in your favor. And the Barrett 50 cal can't compete. If you get charged, you're done. Because you can't exactly no-scope with this thing. It's not like a shotgun. You can't end up hoping that the hip fire is accurate enough. So what happens is that you basically have a temporary time, almost guaranteed throughout your campaign, where you can't use this to defend yourself and you have to resort to your secondary. So in my opinion, even though this thing is really strong, it needs to be able to prime faster. Otherwise, it's not worth it. Because the other sniper rifles, which you'll see later on the list, they kind of are mediocre at the fire rate and kind of mediocre at the damage, but because that they're kind of good a little bit at everything, it's the same logic as the hatchet, eventually that makes it work out in its favor rather than just excelling in one particular given area. Alrighty guys, now for the next gun on the list, this is the M1A. The M1A is basically the semi-auto rifle of this game, because the semi-auto rifles don't exactly happen to be a class in this game. There is kind of like this weird thing where it's like in between a sniper rifle and in between an assault rifle. So I'm just kind of making up a class here and basically saying it's a semi-auto rifle, or in this case a marksman rifle, because that's basically how this thing acts. It's very M14-like, where you can end up getting some long shots down range. It hits pretty strong, but it's in between the assault rifles and the sniper rifles. It's not quite exactly as strong as the snipers, but it's not quite as exactly fast as the ARs. They're kind of just their own thing. And even though that this does sort of apply to the kind of like being a little bit mediocre at everything, or in this case being a jack of all trades, this thing doesn't exactly do it that well. Sure, it does kind of happen to do a little bit of everything, but in my opinion, it doesn't really excel enough at being mediocre enough in all given areas that it actually is, in my opinion, worth using. Because there's a difference between being able to do everything and being able to do everything well. And I feel like this thing could have better fire rate. I feel like it could have either better damage or faster speed. But in reality, because it's so mediocre, on top of the fact that it's got piss poor fire rates, it really isn't good in my opinion. This is just kind of one of those guns that you just use just because you have to. And even then, I would just say recommending, anything else to avoid using it in the first place and being in that situation. Alrighty guys, now we're on to the last pistol of the game, and this is going to end up being the Desert Eagle. The Desert Eagle, in my opinion, is the second best secondary and the best pistol in all of the game, because this thing is probably going to be the most bang for your buck. In terms of the pistols, this thing is definitely the strongest. It's the most strongest pistol just because of the types of rounds it fires. I mean, it's the Desert Eagle, for Christ's sake. And the thing is clip-fed, so it's much more convenient to reload, in my opinion, because you can also be able to put on extended mags or fast mags if you so choose to. You can also just customize the attachments better overall, in my opinion. The thing is pretty damn accurate, it's pretty damn strong, and it's very reliable. Now, unfortunately, the caveat is that you can't get anybody to spawn this in by picking a certain character, and you do have to find it. But when you do find it, though, I feel like that actually makes it actually a really good gun. Because like I said from a prior point earlier in the video, I feel like if a gun spawns in easier, it's therefore just weaker, just for some reason. I feel like guns found out in the wild are usually better, in my opinion, and that just is my experience with the Deagle. Because even though I'm not necessarily a stat guy, some guns, like, it's funny, you can actually like a gun just based off a raw feel. You know what I mean? Like, you could actually just genuinely like something because of how it actually plays in the game, regardless if it's actually good stat-wise. If the thing is feeling good and you're good with it, you can make the gun good. And that's what I feel like the Deagle really is that it's just that you kind of make it your own, and naturally, because it's something that you make on your own, it's really just subject to the skill level of the player, and in my opinion, I've had nothing but good experiences with it. Alrighty guys, now we're on the RPK LMG. The RPK, in my opinion, is just really slow. I like this gun for its amount of damage that it can do and the fact that it has so much ammo in its clip, but damn dude, this thing is slow and sluggish. I think that this gun is good in certain types of maps because of the fact that it's really good at just basically being a camping machine. But however though, because it's super really good at camping, when you do need to rush, this thing is going to be really inconvenient to use. And it really makes it so that way you can only really use it on like half the maps. Hell, not even necessarily half the maps. I'd probably say a little bit under half of the maps. And I feel like that basically comparing this to the other LMG of the game, The other LMG, which we'll get to later on the video, is just much better at what the RPK does. The RPK is basically like a weaker version of the other LMG, and the other LMG is going to be basically the better version of the RPK. And I feel like the RPK really is just not exactly good, other than just the fact that it's just basically a LMG and you can easily use it to camp. That's pretty much it. Alrighty guys, now we're on to the other LMG of the game. This is going to end up being the M249. Now the M249, or in this case another way you can say it is the SAW LMG, this gun, in my opinion, like I said, is just better at what the RPK does. It's just overall better in pretty much every single regard. In my opinion, I feel like it's a little bit faster. You can run a little bit faster. You can reload a little bit faster. I overall just like the way that the gun feels. And in my opinion, that I feel like that this gun just overall is just much more better feeling. Like I said, I really know that it's not exactly a proper way to rank things. It's not really statistic-wise. But in my opinion, I just really do like this gun. Some guns, I'm not going to really be able to properly explain to you why I like them. I just like them. And so that's kind of why I also said that this list is very opinionated based, as much as it also me trying to take into the community's opinion as well. And I just feel like that this gun's good. It's not the best gun, but it's overall just better than what the RPK does. If I had to pick between the two, because there only is 2 LMGs at the moment in the game, the RPK I would rather skip and just get this thing instead. Alright, meme lords, up next is the Phoenix. Now, for the Phoenix, this, in my opinion, is a better Barrett. And I really do mean a better Barrett. This is what the Barrett wants to be. The Phoenix is extremely good at this game. In my opinion, it's my favorite sniper. The Phoenix shoots much faster than the Barrett does, and it has pretty much the exact same damage. It feels consistent. It feels like pretty damn strong. It feels like what the Barrett wants to be. Once again, we're getting into the feels, but besides the feels, overall the gun is just really, really good and consistent. The gun feels like that you can be able to run around with it properly and not feel weighed down. The gun feels like you can really put a punch into the zombies and feel like it's not exactly going to end up getting you killed. This thing overall is just a really solid weapon in general, and I would love to have it in my arsenal. And even though it doesn't spawn in that often, you can't get it to spawn in by picking a character. The Phoenix is really good in my opinion. I want to start using it more just overall. I really think the Phoenix is underrated. I think it truly is the best sniper rifle in the game in my humble opinion. Let me know what you think down below in the comments. Now we move on to the UMP-45. Now for the UMP-45, this SMG isn't exactly bad, although one little minor thing that I would like to see changed is just its magazine size. The magazine size is something that is less than to be desired, because the magazine size is like at 20, when really an SMG should have like 30, and that's just by default, and then like the extended mag should make it like 40 or something. But 20 is the default in this game for the UMP for some reason. In my opinion, that is just way too low. There is some SMGs that have lower, but they excel in other departments. And the UMP is just not it for me. It's not like it's the Call of Duty UMP where you want to like run it just because it's, you know, infamous and famous and just overall like a really popular gun. I know the UMP is a really popular gun in real life, but just because it's popular in real life does not translate into this game. UMP is just not really that good in my opinion, and overall it's really only just a decent gun at the very most. Alright, now we're moving on to the M16. Now the M16 is a gun that, in my opinion, I don't really know how to feel about it, because the M16 is not exactly a gun I care to use, but there's nothing really bad about it to like say that it's like not worth using. I just don't use it just because I just don't like the M16 naturally as a gun. I know that some people love, you know, the M16. It's a very popular gun in real life, very popular gun in video games. It's famous. But the M16 I've really just never cared for. I really only have used it in a select handful of games. The M16 in this game being a burst fire is probably one of the main reasons why I don't like it. But however, though, if it was a fully auto, then there would be no purpose for the M4A1. But the M16, in my opinion, does need to be just buffed somehow. I don't exactly know how to properly give feedback, and I know that sounds bad by saying, hey, change something, and then, like, not giving feedback because I don't know what I want. I know that's basically, like, the death of a game community. But the M16, just overall, I just don't like going back one last time, and probably more times throughout the video, is just the feel. I've never preferred burst guns. I've just really never cared for the M16's design, and overall, it's just my subjective opinion. But I feel like that this spot for where it is fair, because I also just don't see it being used that often. You can't spawn in by default, you have to find it, and when people do find it, most people don't pick it up. so I feel like it's completely valid, and a lot of people probably share my same beliefs, where they just really don't care to pick it up. And in my opinion, why would you pick this up when you can pick up the AK-47, the M4, etc., etc.? You know, there's just better guns overall. And the M16, by the time you find it, it's probably just not worth using. That's probably one of the main reasons why it doesn't get used. Because it doesn't spawn in by default, and you can just find better guns by the time you find the M16. Why bother, you know? Maybe what it needs to do is it needs to be switched to one of the default weapons for somebody, so that way people will use it more. Alrighty guys, now we're moving on to a pick that I honestly was not expecting to have be this high on the list. But, looking at this gun a second time around, in my opinion, I feel like that I was too harsh on it. And this next gun is going to be the Ranch Rifle. Now, the Ranch Rifle is really good, and in fact, I think it actually is really underrated. Because, looking at the second time around, I realized that it's really good overall in pretty much everything, and it basically is kind of like the better version of what the M1A was, because it shoots faster, it's much more overall consistent, and I just like the feel and build of this gun. Now, it's sad because the M1A is a gun that spawns in by default if you play as Jim, but I really feel like it should be the Ranch Rifle instead, because overall this gun is just better, and in my humble opinion, I feel like that the M1A is honestly just a cheap knockoff of this gun. The Ranch Rifle is really, really good. It's that one marksman rifle that hits just perfect between assault rifle and sniper rifle, and really no other gun compares to it in my opinion. Now we move on to the MP5. The MP5 is really good in this game, but it's still just an average gun. Really, we're not going to get to the really, really good guns for just a little bit longer here, guys, because the MP5, even though it is good, it does end up not feeling like it's really worth being in your arsenal. It's the default primary for Doc, so you're leading into that situation again where, because it's default, it's usually not that good. Doesn't exactly feel like it could be as powerful as it could be, etc., etc. I've told this story so many times over and over and over again, so I'll save you guys the grief. But it is the truth, and that is the main exact reasons that I was going to list. But instead of sounding like a broken record, I will just basically tell you guys is that this gun could just overall be better in a variety of different areas. It's a little bit better than the UMP, it's not as bad as the UMP, but when you're comparing it in that logic, that doesn't really sound like a big incentive to use this thing, being like, oh yeah guys, you should totally use the MP5, it's so much better than the UMP45, but it's not as good as everything else. Oh yeah, sure, that sounds very incentivizing there. Now we move on to what I believe are the best guns in Back 4 Blood. The MP5 was kind of like that last middle tier set of guns, and now we really move on to like the guns where if you find this, you want to pick it up in my opinion. The next gun going to be on the list, first off, is going to be the Mini Uzi. You get this when you play as Evangelo, which is really, really cool how that it is a default gun in that regard. It really is nice. But overall, the Mini Uzi, in my opinion, is a really good gun. And it's funny, because typically, I've noticed this with the games I play, the Mini Uzi is almost always never a good gun. And lately, it's been making a comeback for itself. The Mini Uzi is starting to become kind of like that one SMG that always just everyone wants to use. And it's funny because nobody did that before. It's like the Mini Uzi, like imagine the Mini Uzi is like the scrawny kid at school, and then suddenly it gets jacked, and then it's like all big and strong and muscular, and that's the Mini Uzi. It's that one dorky, scrawny kid, and now suddenly they're the cool, attractive, ripped guy. That's what the Uzi is. The Uzi hits like a truck now, which it never used to do before in a lot of games. The thing overall feels like it actually is a gun that you want to use in real life. It's really, really cool feeling. The camos also help it too, even though that's just a cosmetic thing. That's just something I thought I would throw in there as an opinion-based thing. But the Mini Uzi, man, it's just really, really good. The fact that you get by default, the fact that you have it, like, feel overall like it's good, the damage, the ammo capacity is really definitely also a good thing in my opinion, because the ammo is really big in this game. You want to have ammo in Back 4 Blood, most certainly. And the gun's accuracy, the gun's hipfire spread, overall everything is just chef's kiss. Now guys, you thought that we were done with the secondaries, but no, we still have one left we never got back around to, until now. This next gun is going to be the TAC-9, which is going to end up being Carly's main secondary, and this thing, in my opinion, is honestly worth the primary slot. This should be a primary weapon for how good this thing is. because it's the only gun that is a automatic secondary. It's literally a pocket SMG. In fact, literally it is a pocket SMG because it takes from your main SMG ammo when you use this thing. And I think that that's kind of funny how that it's treated ammo-wise like a main SMG. So you don't really want to rock this with any other SMGs because you'll be fighting for the same ammo pool. But the TAC-9, man, it's so damn good. It comes with Carly, and overall I just naturally like Carly. And this also helps. The fact that she has basically one of the best guns in the entire game. The TAC-9, it's accurate, it's got a lot of ammo, it's a pocket SMG, it's the only secondary weapon that has basically full auto SMG capabilities. It's literally a perfect gun. It literally is a perfect gun. It's fully auto, it's accurate, has a lot of damage, it's got good magazine size, good fire rate. Overall, the gun is literally perfect. The only reason why it's not higher up on the list is just because it's a secondary. Because if a secondary was number 1, then we would have a little bit of a balancing issue in this game. But dude, it's a great gun, and it definitely is the best of the secondaries for sure. Because keep in mind, it's past a lot of the primary weapons. Up next is the 870 Express. This is basically the chrome shotgun from Left 4 Dead in Back 4 Blood. And it's really good. It's one of the best shotguns in my opinion because the thing is overall really strong for a pump action shotgun. Because normally when you start to get later on into the campaign, you want to have like a semi-auto shotgun or a fully auto shotgun. Most people typically do not keep a pump action shotgun. But the pump action shotgun, the Express, it's really great. It's really strong, and I love the boom, boom. Like, that's the feeling I get using the Express. It's literally the stereotypical, you cock it, you hear that sound, and you know what's coming next, and it's just the gigundo boom ragdoll shot. The zombies do not want to get in front of the Express. It's the get the hell out of my way gun. It's really, really fun to use when you go with the mentality. If you go in with the mentality of like, I just want to just go in and I started blasting. If you want to do the I started blasting type of mentality, this gun can do it, and it will definitely deliver on your fun fantasy side of your mind. You also want to know what's another get the hell out of my way gun? The next spot, the AA-12 shotgun. This thing is just pure fun. It's not even necessarily that good. It's just complete raw fun, man. A fully auto drum mag shotgun is literally one of the best guns you can shoot. It's just such a fun feeling gun. I've always wanted to shoot a fully auto shotgun in real life, specifically the AA-12, because every single time I see an AA-12, first of all, number one, I think of the Brecci from the Call of Duty Black Ops 3 and how overpowered semi-auto and fully auto guns are, because it really enlightened me and how those types of guns can be really good. But also, in addition to that, I also just think of the one Expendables 2 scene with Terry Crews, where he sneaks up behind the several guys with a AA-12 and just lays into them. And it's just like the perfect, like, just badass gun that you want to use. It's like an RPG and a minigun. It's just a gun that's fun, that makes you feel overpowered, and you want to just destroy people with, and literally nothing else. You just want to basically get some free insta-kills, even if you die shortly after. It's just fun to mow people down for a few seconds. I love the AA-12 for that exact reason, man. It's such a fun gun. Alrighty guys, we are at the final 5 guns. These are the guns that if you find them, you must pick them up because they're basically at S level, God level. I really overall love these guns, and I'm pretty sure you guys do too. So let me know, just once again, I want to give a friendly reminder in the comment section down below to put what your guys' favorite guns are. Give me your guys' list. I really want to compare and contrast to see what we all unanimously agree on, to see what is and is not the fan favorites for this particular given subject. And the fan favorite things I always know are subjective. I know someone's always going to like something more than another person will. So please, just let me know what you guys think down below in the comments. I really love doing this. This is one of my favorite reasons to make the ranking series, just to see the differences in everyone's opinions. So let me know down below in the comments. But next, guys, for the next gun on the list, this is going to end up being the Scar H. The Scar H is a really solid assault rifle. My friend Jake personally really likes it quite a lot. And I can see why he likes it, because the Scar H is really, really good in this game. In the Left 4 Dead, if we were to compare it to the Left 4 Dead Scar H, the Left 4 Dead Scar H was kind of like a burst gun. I know that the Scar H was full auto in Left 4 Dead, but it was kind of burst-like. It was simulated with the way it fired, and I really didn't exactly care for that. But in this game, it's just completely fully automatic. The Scar H also feels like it spawns in quite often in comparison to some of the other guns, so ironically, because even though it actually is a really strong gun, you think it wouldn't spawn in nearly as often, but it actually does spawn in quite more often than you think it does. So for how infrequent some of the other guns spawn in, it basically makes the Scar H better because of that. I don't know if it's a spawn logic thing or whatever, but the Scar H, for how often it spawns in usually about halfway through a given campaign, so you usually can fully upgrade it and get to buy purple by the time you get to the end of a campaign, which overall makes it worth using, because one of the biggest pet peeves I have about this game is that you can't switch attachments off of a gun unless you pick another attachment up. Which basically means that if you ever want to upgrade your gun, because like it's a different color or just a gun you like better than the other ones you basically have to sacrifice all attachments and rarities. But the Scar H, the way that the loot spawns, it just doesn't really cause that problem. Maybe that's just subjective to me and what I've noticed, but overall, when you look at it, at the end of the day, the Scar H feels good, it looks good, and overall just does everything good. So if it's not broken, don't fix it. Now, if you thought the Express Shotgun was the get the hell out of my way gun, if you thought that the AA-12 was the get the hell out of my way gun, there is still one last shotgun that truly does it the best and invented the term get the hell out of my way, and that's going to be the Super 90, or what would have been the Left 4 Dead model shotgun. This thing is so much fun. The Super 90 in this game really truly reminds me about why I love shotguns. This gun is so fun. It's fast, it's efficient, its hipfire accuracy is definitely a great thing about it, because shotguns, those are usually the more forgiving guns for hipfire accuracy, and this gun most certainly does it well. I feel like there literally is no point aiming down sights with it sometimes, which basically makes it so I can essentially run and gun almost 24/7, and I really do like that. You put a laser on this thing, you're all set, man. The Super 90, it's just pop a cap and zombies' asses left and right, and it reloads really fast too if you also get the right attachments on it, dude, so it's literally the instant gratification gun. The Super 90 is so much fun to use, man. It's just really too bad that it doesn't spawn in as much as I would like it to, but for the fact that it spawns in infrequently, it does actually ironically work out in its favor and makes it feel like a treat. It's in this sweet spot where it's like so overpowered that it kind of needs to spawn infrequently, because if you used it all the time, pretty much always, almost everyone would run the thing. So maybe that's a good thing that's not like a default gun or something. And the fact that it spawns in infrequently can basically make it feel like Wonder Weapon-like at sometimes. So I would say the Super 90 is really in a perfect spot, honestly. You really don't need to change it. It's more rather me just reflecting on fond memories of just using this specific gun. 3 guns left, guys, and this one you might have not expected to be this far on the list, but I really do like this gun, and if you get the right attachments on it, it actually is quite good. Let me know what you think about this spot, because this might be the most 50-50, I feel, in a lot of people's opinions, but I'm going to put the number 3 spot as the Vector SMG. The Vector in this game, hear me out, is really fun and really efficient, because it's basically a bullet hose. The Vector shoots super fast, like ludicrously fast. This thing basically is so fast that if I were to compare it to any other fast video game gun, it's like the Scorpion Evo from Black Ops 2 if you put on rapid fire, if you ever did play that game. I know some of you guys watch my COD videos, so some of you guys also might have been able to play that COD game back in the day before it got hacked to crap. The Scorpion Evo on that game shot so ridiculously fast that it literally ran out of ammo the moment that you shot it. And that's kind of like the Vector. If it wasn't for the speed of the Vector, I probably wouldn't have it this high on the list. But I'm just having fun with this list, and I put it up high because I want to recommend this gun to you guys. I don't know if necessarily this is going to be a popular pick, but if I can recommend a really good gun to you guys, it would be the Vector. I want more people to use the Vector. I want to get more recognition because I really think it's one of the best guns in the game. I mean, hell, I put it at the number 3 spot, for Christ's sake. If you guys haven't used the Vector, please at least give it a chance. I think that you guys will really end up enjoying what you see. Alrighty, guys, now we're down to the top 2 guns. And I know these are the top 2 guns for you guys as well as they are for me because I see these things everywhere. Trust me, I've seen the people carrying these things, and dude, they're always decked out. They're always rocking their golden camos. These things are fan favorites. And coming in at the number 2 spot, this is the M4A1 assault rifle. This is a default gun you will get in the spawn every single time, so you can always pick it up whenever you want to. The gun is so much fun to use, it's consistently good, it puts a lot of damage down range, it's really accurate, it has like 0 recoil. The thing is overall got the best cosmetics in the game in my opinion, like the gold camo on it looks absolutely beautiful. This thing is just a perfect gun almost. Even though it's not necessarily going to be everyone's favorite, I feel like a good majority of people really like using this thing. It's easy, it's convenient, and it's fun. Basically, the M4A1 is essentially going to end up being the perfect weapon for pretty much every generic FPS player you can think of. It's always in a lot of games because a lot of people like it. They like the real-life one, they like the fictional one. The M4 is just a good gun. It's basically the M4 is like a Marvel superhero. It always gets reimagined slightly every now and again, but it's consistently fun and always worth bringing back because the main concept still stands. And for this main concept it's just a good, fun assault rifle. The M4A1, in my opinion, Back 4 Blood is one of the best guns in the game. And if it wasn't for the number 1 spot, it would be number 1. But however, though, I think that the number 1 spot is not only going to be your guys' favorite, but it also is just my personal favorite too. Ladies and gentlemen, meme lords of all ages, coming in at the number 1 spot for the best gun in all of Back 4 Blood, this is going to be my favorite gun of all time, the AK-47. This is my favorite gun of all time. I love the AK-47. It's just such a badass gun, period. It's something that's so fun to use. It's lethal, it's quick, it's cool looking. I love the backstory behind the gun. And the thing I most certainly imagine the most when I feel like I'm picking up an AK-47 is just Rick Grimes from The Walking Dead. This ranking video, we are going to be ranking all the special infected in Back 4 Blood. Now, for this list, this is going to be very interesting because we recently just got some tweaks when it comes to the special infected, and so therefore this ends up impacting my original list that I was going to have for this video. Now, when it comes to this video, I am also going to be including all the variants of the Hawker, Tallboy, and also the Wretch line because there is 3 versions of each of those. And I will also be including the Abomination at the end of the game that you end up facing, the big final boss zombie, because that technically is still a special infected. So the whole entire list is going to consist of 15 special infected altogether. So we're going to be comparing all 15 and seeing truly which one is the best for the game and which ones need or do not need to be changed. If you guys end up enjoying today's video, as always, please end up showing your support by dropping a like, comment, and subscribe. If there's any particular video that you would like to see me make or a particular thing you would like me to rank in the future, please put it in the comments down below. But anyways, guys, let's rank all the special infected in Back 4 Blood. Alrighty, guys, so coming in at the very first spot, in my opinion, this is the least fun special infected in the entire game, and this is going to end up being the one Tallboy variant, the Crusher. This thing is really annoying. Out of all the special infected in Back 4 Blood, the whole Tallboy line is just extremely annoying to me. The Tallboy in this game is what I basically thought of the Jockey in Left 4 Dead 2, just that one special infected that is there for the sole purpose of annoying and inconveniencing you. And that is exactly how I feel with the Tallboy, specifically the Crusher in particular, because the Crusher is the most annoying of all the 3. Because this is the only one that can actually physically trap you. So instead of going around and beating you to death with his arm, he will actually physically grab you and pin you and make it so that way you cannot defend yourself. So the only way that you can get out of this is either by A, having a breakout ability, by having a card or playing as somebody such as Evangelo, or you also have to have a stun gun. And those are the only ways you can really defend yourself unless you end up getting saved by your teammates. And in my opinion, this is just something that I really hate having happen to me when I'm playing, especially the higher difficulties, when a Crusher has just decided to just spawn out of nowhere and just decides to start fiddling me in the corner, and I feel like I'm an episode of Law & Order SVU. So the Crusher, in my opinion, is just a really annoying and obnoxious infected. He seriously really could honestly be out of the game, and I really wouldn't care. And I'm actually just going to follow this up with the 2 other tall boys, because those were going to be in the next order of the list anyways. And the next one that is not exactly as annoying, at least in my opinion, but is still quite annoying, is going to end up being the Bruiser variant. This is essentially the tall boy, but he actually can swing his arm more rapidly. So this one doesn't pin you, he'll only just swing his arm and try to beat you to death, but at least it's more fair that way. Although he does swing significantly faster than the normal tall boy would, so he is a lot stronger, and therefore just a little bit more annoying. And then lastly, it's just the standard tall boy. They're just all annoying, not only just because of their powers, just because they're also just immune to everything. They can't be stopped by barbed wire, and really the only thing that can even remotely stop them is the frag grenade. But that's only if, like, they don't have armor, or if they're not on, like, Nightmare, or even, you know, Veteran, for example. If you're just playing on the normal game modes, these really aren't necessarily that bad. I will give you the benefit of the doubt, tall boy. But however, though, pretty much anything past Recruit, and now a little bit of the early levels of Veteran, these guys are honestly just something that I just don't want to deal with. I'm just being honest. I never really liked the tall boy. They kind of were just annoying just straight off the rip, even as early as the alpha. It's just that they're way too strong because of what they're immune to and what they can do. It's not exactly about the spawn rate, and it's not even necessarily about giving them certain powers. It's just the fact that there really is only like 1 or 2 counter to these things. I could live with the fact that they are really strong, but however though, they either need to make it so that way you can counter it stronger, like for example more than just a frag grenade. I wish that everything in the game was pretty solid, but that's just not the case. There is a little bit of a meta here. Or I would just wish that the corruption cards just wouldn't make them so like deliberately annoying. Like they're almost the director sometimes feels like it wants to be belligerent with me and just wants to spawn either tall boy hordes or specifically like annoying versions of them, such as armored crushers, for example, is a corruption card you can get, which is the armored version of my least favorite version of the entire special infected line, which I just think is very stupid, and I much rather would go without it. So from Crusher to Bruiser to Tallboy, literally all those 3, just in that order, I could honestly go the rest of my life and never deal with the Tallboy again, and I'd be completely fine. Alrighty guys, so now we're on to a special infected that doesn't necessarily annoy me as much, but more rather I am just disappointed in. Because this is one of the boss zombies, believe it or not, in the game. And I really want something better for this special infected just because it's based off of one of the most famous zombies in all of Left 4 Dead. And it's just sad to see this interpretation of it because it basically is a massive downgrade because it's really not fun to fight. And that is going to end up being the Breaker. The Breaker is the tank equivalent of Back 4 Blood's special infected bosses. And in my opinion, I really just don't like the Breaker. I am very sad to say this, but I think it's really just an annoying special infected and it's just kind of dumb. It's really just a massive letdown. I did enjoy the idea of there being a tank equivalent in this game, but really, honestly, one of the types of special infected that functions as a tank better is the Ogre at this point, because it plays like a more traditional tank. And the Breaker in this game is just really, like, I don't know what to say. It's just like, it kind of doesn't feel like what the tank was meant to be. It kind of feels just like a mixture of all the different prior special infecteds that we've faced. So, like, for example, the tank in Left 4 Dead, we all know, it was a zombie that would chase you relentlessly, would always constantly come after you. And it would be able to do things such as throw rocks, beat you to death, and it would just not stop coming. The Breaker in Back 4 Blood is similar, but more tedious and more circumstantial. Let me explain. So, he has abilities now of what some of the Left 4 Dead special infected had mixed with him. So, the rock throwing ability is actually gone. That was repurposed and given to the Ogre. So, because of that, the Breaker needed some now type of abilities that could end up helping him because his kit basically got compromised. Well, instead of giving him something that would be more tank-like, they basically gave him, like, passive, like, environmental abilities. And basically, he uses the teamwork of the other zombies to his advantage. He basically dog teams you, because what happens is that when he spawns in, he will fling himself. He has a jumping ability. He's basically got like a lunge exosuit, if you will. He can basically jump all over the place. He's very springy. But the problem is, though, is that once he lands on you, he will then proceed to scream. And then when he screams, he will alert the zombies near you, and they will come attack you. And on top of that as well, he likes to, for some reason, play Fortnite with you and shrink the zone in, because yes, I'm being serious when I say this. He makes a gas zone around you, and he shrinks it over time, and until you kill him, that will be there progressively shrinking as the match goes on, and he will either A, kill you by the zombies that he summons, B, the storm will close and it will kill you that way, or C, he just beats you down with his own bare fists. There is 3 things against you in high quantities. And did I also forget to mention that every single time he screams, the hordes stack. So therefore, if you get extremely unlucky and he spawns in a very bad spot and he gets the jump on you, you are now trapped in whatever given area you are in, and you have a storm closing. Plus, also in addition to that, is if he continues to jump on you, he will scream again, time and time again, attracting more zombies, and basically screwing you over. There's literally no other way I can word this. He essentially completely can ruin the game, depending on what spot he spawns in, how many zombies he spawns in, and also what difficulty you're playing on. And it's just annoying. I'm basically getting so many things thrown at me at once that's not even exactly about being in a boss fight anymore. It's more than rather about like the director just deciding to say, hey, I'm going to screw you over. See, this is what happens when you end up having a breaker, right? You're playing your normal game of Back 4 Blood, you're minding your own business, you have your captions on, and so therefore you see that breaker has shown up, he randomly jumps into the action, then he's all of a sudden just like, welcome to a random episode of me screaming. And keep in mind that this is already after the December update, and he's still annoying. It's not that he's impossible to kill, it's just that I much rather would not end up having to fight him. Because when the tank shows up in Left 4 Dead, it's fun to fight him. The breaker is not. He's just inconvenience. I don't enjoy facing him, and that's really not the mentality that I should be having when I end up going into this, but it is. I can't make myself like the breaker. I've tried. I really have genuinely tried. But until he is changed to either A, he can't stack his hordes, B, you can't end up having a zone come in to close the gap on you, or C, they just make it so that way he can't end up screaming at all, because that would just be really good, honestly, because he's already a strong boss as it is by beating and jumping on you. But being able to have like boomer abilities, plus also he wanted to play Fortnite with you, all that stacked together is just too much. So Turtle Rock, all I ask of you is that just please consider nerfing the breaker, either that or reworking him, because as he stands, he's just not fun to play against, no matter what difficulty it is. Alrighty guys, now we have got the Stalker. This is the very first line of the Hawker family, and basically the Stalker is the jockey of Back 4 Blood. I never really liked the jockey in Left 4 Dead, I kind of still don't. I mean, it's not nearly as bad from when I was a teenager. I originally hated him as a teenager. I understand that he's just a special infected and that's what he does, but just sometimes, man, like I get in my own head and I just think that he's personally laughing at me and it pisses me off. But yeah, in Back 4 Blood, the Stalker, luckily he doesn't have an annoying-ass cackle. But in this game, he still does have the exact same basic concept of basically lunging at you and dragging you away. So the premise still stands about like just annoying abilities. I don't like the fact that he can basically take you out of the action and basically jump over your head, because I don't like the idea of having to do like aerial tracking. I much rather would have my special infected on the ground, or if not, at least be able to be easily seen, because when all of a sudden they have an exosuit on, I have to start shooting into the sky like I'm playing Duck Hunt. It just gets annoying. It's not nearly as bad and as inconvenient as the jockey, but I still don't really care for it. So at least in this game, it's not nearly as annoying as it could be, but I still just don't prefer it. That's just the way I look at it, at least. Alright, now we've got the Stinger. And yes, I said the Stinger, because I know some people, for some reason, and I'm looking at you randoms that I play in my public lobbies with, sometimes you guys mispronounce that word, I'm watching you. we don't need another Back 4 Blood N-word problem. But yeah, so the Stinger in the Back 4 Blood, basically this is another one of the Hawker variants in the game, and basically this one is specifically meant to just play tag with you. it shoots its spit at you, basically like a spitter, but instead of leaving it just, on the ground, it instead can just shoot at you and, basically poke you repeatedly. He hits you with spit, recharges, hits you with spit. It basically is doing little pokes at you. It's not strong enough that it can just kill you by itself, but the problem is, though, is that it does slow you down over time. So it is going to end up making it so that way other things will kill you. So this special effect is not really meant to kill you on its own. It's more rather meant to just distract you, kind of like nitpick you, get on your nerves a little bit. But at least the good news is, though, is that it doesn't necessarily take you out of the action. It stays at a distance and does leave you alone, doesn't get right in your face and make it so that way you feel like you're being basically destroyed by a whole swarm of these things. Yes, they can stack and sometimes get annoying and basically make it where you cannot move. But I have all the variants of the Stalkers, or the Hawkers, or the Stingers. Basically, I'd say that this one is probably the second most inconvenient. It's not nearly as inconvenient as the Stalker, in my opinion. But I really don't care for the Stinger. It's just an okay special infected. I could just go without it, like I said, for some of the other ones. Because for me, I don't really have any attachment to it. It just sucks because in this game, there's not exactly any personality behind any of these special infected. It's more rather about, like, just solely their abilities. So if their abilities are not cool, I don't really exactly care. But that's just me. I feel like if the game gave the special infected cues or, like, music that was more distinct and almost personality driven, kind of like how in Left 4 Dead that was the case, I think that the special infected, like, it wouldn't necessarily matter as much to me, but it's, since there's no personality, it's just based off of how OP or not they are. And if I'm basing off the kit, I could kind of just go without the Stinger. That's just me, though. Now we move on to the Reeker. This is the very first Wretch version of the zombie. And the Wretch, in my opinion, out of all of its variants, the Reeker is probably going to be the least best in my opinion, but it's not exactly a bad special infected either. When I'm playing on any difficulty, the Reeker has never been annoying, and nor has it been boring. It's not exactly a special infected that's original. It's basically the essential variant of the Boomer minus the vomit part. It does have at least the explosion variant of him, though. And all this is really meant to do is basically be a walking suicide bomb. All the guy does is just walk up to you and explode. It's supposed to be basically like, hey, come at me, bro, and then he ends up dying. He's there to just be temporarily a distraction, once again, but I'm used to that. I'm used to that with the Boomer, so it's really not a big deal to me. Because it feels a lot like the Boomer, I think that's maybe one of the reasons why I like it. But however, though, it's not exactly without its faults. It's still exactly the way that the Boomer is, minus the vomit part. But however, though, that can end up making him boring because now the Wretch is the one that has the vomit, and the Exploder has a more lethal version of this explosion ability. So the Reeker is essentially the Exploder, but weaker, and less, I guess you could say inconvenient and less Boomer-like. But I could say this without really skipping a beat is that he's not that bad, he's just not really that good either. We're starting to get to that average category when it comes to the special infected. Speaking of which, now we move on to the Exploder. The Exploder is once again another one of the Wretch family, and the Exploder, he basically is going to be the exact same thing as the Reeker, but more lethal. He basically has a bigger blast radius, and the guy essentially is just a little bit more efficient at what he does. Pretty much it's the exact same thing as what the Reeker does, but he literally is just more meant to explode. The explosion is more rather what he does, rather than the acid pool that the Reeker leaves behind. And in my opinion, I feel like that the Exploder, he's more enjoyable just because of the fact that he is more of a threat, because he's a less boring version of the Reeker. I don't mind when the special infected are strong sometimes, it's just that they gotta be strong in the right ways, where it doesn't make the gameplay either too slow and boring, or where it makes it too chaotic and you feel like you can't do anything. And that's where I feel like the Exploder is starting to be the beginning of the more game-helping special infected rather than inconvenient ones. And now we move on to the Wretch. The Wretch is going to be the Boomer, pretty much, of this game, because this is the only one that can actually projectile vomit. He can track you, and he can fling his vomit over really high distances, and he's actually a lot more beefy than the original Boomer. All of these versions of the, the Wretch, they are a lot beefier than the Boomer. But this one in particular is the most like the original Boomer. It's just that he can't be, basically, instantly exploded. So he essentially has more armor, just thicker skin, and he's overall a lot more dangerous. And you have to respect him, because if you don't kill him quick enough, he's going to screw you over. If you don't end up paying attention to him, he can actually very much kill you. Like, he can kill you very quick, actually, especially on the higher difficulties. He has been nerfed within the recent patch, and he can't exactly track you as well anymore. He can't get you over as long distances, and he can't, like, just follow you by just spraying left or right like a garden hose. But that makes it more fair, though. Because of the fact that he is chunkier, the fact that he is beefier and he can take more hits, he does need to in turn be slower, and this kind of makes him like the opposite version of the Boomer. Instead of being quick and weak, he is strong and slow. He's become more like a linebacker, if that makes any sense. So in my opinion, I feel like the Wretch is probably the most balanced of all the special infected that we've encountered so far. Legitimately, to be honest, he's not annoying, he's not boring, and actually I feel like he helps the game. So now as we move on to the last few, this is where we start to get into pretty much the really good special infected that I can play against quite regularly. Alrighty guys, now we've finally gotten over to the Abomination. So this is the final boss of the game and basically the final special infected that we see in the story. The Abomination, in my opinion, he needs to be recognized for the fact of what he is, which is just a final boss. Obviously, he's meant to be on one mission and one mission only for a one-time event, and even though that's the case, I still like that, because in Left 4 Dead, you know, the only bosses we ever had was basically the Witch and the Tank, and even though those bosses were cool, we need to have a step up. We need to have something to improve upon, because keep in mind that Left 4 Dead 2 came out in 2009, Back 4 Blood came out in 2021. It's been a long time coming. We need to have a much bigger, more dangerous boss, something that we can fear, something that will be a really big challenge. And the Abomination is that. This guy has his own mission that it takes that long. So we all know that this is one big dude. This guy essentially takes up a whole entire map by himself. And basically, he's meant to be the very big conclusion to the end of the game. You know, the main story final mission. So essentially what happens is that when you start the mission, you have to fight his tentacle half, which is basically where the 4 tentacles show up out of the ground, and you have to shoot their mouths and blow them up and, you know, basically kill them so that way you can fall down into the ground where the Abomination's face is for his second phase. Now with his second phase, you have to shoot the spores that are in his mouth and make it so that way they blow up, so that way you can end up getting him to move. Once you defeat him in his second phase, his third phase, there is 4 spores around his body as he's trying to go over to Fort Hope to destroy it, and you have 5 minutes to destroy all of his spores to kill him before he reaches to the end. Otherwise, you win or you lose. And in my opinion, this is a really well done boss fight. He's scary, he's intimidating, he's not annoying, he's most certainly not boring, and even though he is exactly the same every single time, exact same identical patterns, it's only just for the one mission at the very end of the game. So I think that that's good. If he was a normal special infected and he just showed up randomly again, you know, amongst all the other ones, obviously that just wouldn't work. But the fact that he's only meant for just the one-off makes him fine. It makes it completely fine that way because it's a choice. It's a good conclusion to the finale of the game. And in my opinion, he's one of the most unique bosses that we've ever seen in all the, you know, the series. Because he's not really based off of anything, he's just kind of his own thing, and so therefore he's very original. I remember my very first reaction. If you guys don't remember it, I'll play the clip right here in the video. But take a look at my reaction when I initially saw this thing. Oh, that's a new character, actually. Wait, what the f was that? Wait, what? What the f is that thing? What are you? As you guys can see, I was extremely hyped for when the Abomination was first shown. It was such a cool-ass thing to see, because I was not expecting that for this game. And that was when the game wasn't even released yet. And I'll tell you this, is that the game did deliver. When I first played against the Abomination, it was a very challenging boss at first, because I didn't know how it worked yet. And then when I figured out how to, you know, make it work, everyone was like, oh, well, this is really, really cool. But how do you beat it? You know, like, what did you do differently? And I then therefore made a tutorial, and then I like let everyone know. And then once we kind of all as a community got the hang of it, it's now just, you know, easy. Like, we all know how to defeat the Abomination. It's very straightforward. And for anybody that's new, it's very easy to show them, because it's literally the exact same thing over and over and over again. And really the only thing that can make it harder is just the fact that everything else spawns trying to defend the thing. But however, though, this infected is still extremely cool. Obviously, without the other special infected, it really wouldn't be that big of a boss, just because, you know, it would be very easy to kill him just because he's very pattern-like, very predictable. But however, though, he really works for what he did. So Turtle Rock, you made a really great final boss, in my opinion. It definitely lived up to expectations. and I really do hope that you can replicate something like this again in Back 4 Blood 2 or just any future DLC you work on. But guys, we are not done yet. We still have 5 more Special Infected left to go. I purposely only put the Abomination so far into the list, is just because the Abomination, as much as he is cool, he only is just for that one single mission, and I want to be able to play all the other missions. So because he's only available on the one, I decided to put him at, you know, the very close part of the list, like towards the end, but I do have other ones that do end up getting better spots. And that next Special Infected that's going to be on said better spots is going to actually, believe it or not, be the Snitch. I really like the Snitch. The Snitch, in my opinion, is a really good reused version of the assets from a scrapped Left 4 Dead Infected, believe it or not. For those of you guys that never have heard of this, I'll basically give you the backstory. The Snitch in Back 4 Blood is basically a repurposed version of the scrapped Special Infected concept from Left 4 Dead, which was going to end up being the Screamer. The Screamer was meant to end up being a Special Infected in Left 4 Dead that did almost essentially the exact same thing as the Snitch. He would be on the map, and he would run away from you, and then he would call a horde by screaming. He was basically meant to end up being like in a straitjacket and be basically an insane asylum patient. But however, though, the idea got scrapped because basically what they had him do was they had him get out of the action. He ran away from the survivors. And because he would run away, it made it so that way you had to feel like you had to chase him, because if you didn't, he would alert a horde to you. So he was like a very campy boomer, almost, it was like. And really, it wasn't fun to play against him. So because of that, they cut the idea. But later on, several years later, they repurposed it with the Snitch. So instead of the Snitch doing the same thing as the Screamer and running away from you, he just wanders around and he kind of just doesn't do anything. He doesn't exactly seek you out, as far as I'm aware. I think he just walks around, and if you leave him alone, he's not going to scream. But, however, though, if you shoot him, he will scream, and he will summon a horde of zombies, unless you can kill him quick enough. Or the game decides to say, go F yourself, and makes it so that way there's a corruption card that makes it so that way, regardless if you kill him or not, he will still scream and alert a horde anyways. That's always fun. But, yeah, so the Snitch, in my opinion, even though he can be a little bit inconvenient at times, especially in higher difficulties, because sometimes, unless you just completely avoid him, because of bad luck with corruption cards where he'll alert a horde regardless if you kill him or not, I still think that he's a really good Special Infected. I'm really glad they were finally able to repurpose the Screamer, because now he, technically in spirit form, exists in Back 4 Blood. Now, I think that you guys wouldn't be expecting to see this that high on the list, but it's actually going to end up being the Sleeper. The Sleeper is basically like the secret hidden 4th variant of the Hawker, or in this case, he just kind of is his own Special Infected. But I do like to think of him as a Hawker variant, even though he's not technically, because he looks just super similar. But the Sleeper, regardless of what his origins are, the Sleeper, in my opinion, is one of the best Special Infected in the game, because of the fact that he really makes you have to think. He's not exactly a threat unless you end up just making a mistake. Because, think about it this way, the way that the Sleeper works is that he literally can't do anything unless you're too close to him and you're also within line of sight. He just sits on random walls, and he's kind of got like this sleeper pod. And if you get too close to him, if he's got a direct line of sight on you, he's going to jump out randomly, and he's going to pounce you, and then he's going to kill you. Now, if he's in a spot where you can avoid him, it doesn't even matter. He just chills there. He doesn't come out of his, his little cocoon. He just sits there and vibes. So you could hypothetically never run into a sleeper as long as you're careful. But that's the thing. Not everyone is careful. They've been tweaking him around, so they made it so that way he's more accurate and he's less likely to miss when he's trying to jump at you. So you really have to be aware now, because before you kind of could cheese them, you could just like basically run around them. You didn't have to actually worry, but because that would make it so that way you would actually have to focus more. Because essentially what people would do is if they just ran fast enough, they basically could just cheese the system. They didn't actually have to pay attention to their surroundings and look for, sleepers hiding in the distance. But now you can. So basically what he's meant to do is a wake-up call. He will just be chilling, kind of like the Snitch, although he can't move. So really it's up to you to just be paying attention. If you pay attention and you see him, he's one of the easiest Special Infected in the entire game. However though, if you're not paying attention, he will kill you. He will kill you quite fast. He's quick, he's accurate now, you can't avoid him really anymore, and he will destroy you very fast. He's one of the fastest TTKs. So, if you're not careful, you'll die. Trust me, I've had it happen to me several times, and it's not worth being lazy. And I like the fact that he does this because it makes you have to pay attention. Because one of the worst things about these types of games is when your teammates just don't pay attention. And the sleeper is literally designed to make people listen. It's literally designed to make people be like, hey, I probably shouldn't be blasting random music out of my open mic and be just sitting here drinking with my buddies and basically being obnoxious. I should actually strategize and be courteous of my teammates. So I shout out the sleeper for being the way he is because it makes the game only play better. And now, guys, we have got the Hawker. The Hawker is going to be my personal favorite special infected that's not at least a boss in the game. Because the Hawker, the way that he works is that he is essentially like a combo between the Hunter and the Spitter. He basically has long-range Hunter abilities. He can end up shooting spit out of himself that can end up pinning you, so that way you cannot move. And he can end up doing this quite well, actually. And plus, also, he just looks cool. In my opinion, this is the coolest looking special infected in pretty much the whole entire game, because he looks basically like a zombie, like forearms from Ben 10 Spider-Man type of zombie. He looks really creepy, and honestly, out of all the special infected, in my opinion, he's probably the most cosmetically good looking, in my opinion, and I think that that should be recognized. I do wish that, like I said, the special infected had detailed music, because if he had music, it would be even more cool for him. But in my opinion, regardless of all this, I just still think that the Hawker is really good in the game. He's very good at balancing the game and making the game feel intense without being inconvenient to you or your team, because he's only fair. Basically, if you see him, you can kill him quick enough before he's able to end up spitting on you. But however, though, if he does get you, you can't do anything else. You either A, have a taser, a breakout ability, or your teammates melee you. And it's good, too, that they can melee you, because if they had to, like, rip off the spit, kind of like how they end up having it like with the survivors that are stuck to walls or when you're being rescued after you died. If it was like that, this wouldn't work and he would not be nearly as high as he is on the list right now. But because it's just one stab or one punch even, and you're automatically free, it's easy. You can save someone very easy. But if there's a cluster F going on, kind of like normally how there is in Back 4 Blood, this isn't always a guaranteed. So it's an easy fix. It's just a matter about whether or not the circumstances allow for that easy fix. So it's a really good balancing act. It's more rather about like how good your team is at multitasking and how good you are at being able to survive around the fly. Because if you're not going to end up helping your teammates, you're going to get killed for it. Because the Hawker will probably end up getting you if you're a straggler. He'll probably also end up getting you if you decide to be like, hey, I'm not going to heal my teammates. I'm basically going to be selfish and try to do a speed build and just run to the very end of the map and just be irrelevant from what's going on. He's going to get you. He's going to get you, and he's going to get you and make it so that way you can't move, and you have to wish that your teammates show up there on time before you basically bleed out to death. And I like that. It rewards the people that stick together without punishing people that at least want to be an aggressive player. Now, guys, this is one of the biggest comebacks that I've seen for all the special infected in this game so far. Coming in at number 2. It's not quite number 1, but maybe you might get there one day, buddy. This is going to end up being the Ogre. The Ogre has made a massive comeback, in my opinion, for how he is. Because from what he once was, it's a drastic change. Now, the Ogre has been available in the game since the alpha. And in the alpha, in my opinion, he was a massive letdown because he didn't perform the way that he does now. Trust me, he didn't at all. Because basically what the Ogre would do is that he would still essentially spawn in like he does. You know, he would be this big threat. He'd be like one of the biggest boss zombies in the entire game, you know, other than the Abomination, of course. And basically what he would do is he would basically be a glorified, newer version of the tank. Because basically this is the tank of the game, honestly. Even though, you know, that's technically the breaker. In my opinion, the Ogre plays more like what a tank would be. He's got the rock throwing ability. He's this overall big dude that just comes in and just tries to just destroy you by grabbing you and flinging you and punching you. And he does a really good job of that. Now, before in the alpha, what would happen is that he would spawn in and he would basically just be a giant meat wall. He would basically block off the campaign. Because what would happen is that if he showed up, he would basically follow you, and this would lead to players hiding, and they would basically be in an area where all he can do is just shove in his arm and hope to grab you, but obviously a lot of players aren't that stupid. So essentially what would happen is that you would be stuck in a wall, or a corner, or somewhere where he couldn't get you, and he wouldn't leave. He was not programmed to leave. He would relentlessly just stay there and wait for you, which would make the game basically halt and be at a dead stop. If you didn't kill him, he would wait there endlessly, and it felt like a Call of Duty lobby. He would just sit there and he'd be waiting and waiting and waiting until you moved, which would basically either force you to kill yourself or basically take the biggest risk of your life. And it would make it so that way the game wasn't fun. He was basically just a giant, massive, inconvenience to you. Literally the pure definition of inconvenience. You couldn't kill him because at the time his health was just way too large. So all you could do was just hope to outrun him. A lot of people back in the alpha, they would do what the survivors do, like with their dialogue where they just say run. Most people would just run. They would just forget about him and move on. But then he would respawn on another chapter, and then another chapter, and he basically would show up infinitely. And you can get him to half health, and basically when he was at half health, he would at least go away at that point. But the problem was that wasn't until they updated it. Because literally, like I said before, he would just not do that. He would just stay there infinitely. And then they made it a little bit easier where he would eventually leave at the halfway mark, but his health was still high. And they progressively tuned this over the next coming weeks and months and everything. And then by the time that the beta came around, he was significantly better. By the time that the game launched, he was a lot better. Because now he only shows up at specific instances. He will leave once you get him to half HP. He will keep his half HP and not just get it back, because before I think he would also get his HP back depending on the given circumstances. Not all the time, but I think there were certain circumstances. I just can't remember if that was a bug or not. But regardless though, he only shows up in certain circumstances. He will leave at half HP now, so that way he can't basically trap you. He's significantly a lot easier to kill because of the the lack of ammo that there is around the map. And overall, he is just more fun to face. If you choose to fight him, he's not going to basically just camp and try to avoid you, because sometimes what would happen is that if you decide to actually fight him, sometimes he would just be way too eager to get away. If you were killing him too quick, he would be really quick to leave. Like, instead of going to a certain spot on the map to leave, he would literally just dig straight down from where he is, and he would almost be impossible to kill unless you had grenades, because once he got to the halfway point, he's like, oh, no, regardless of where I'm standing, I'm just going to instantly just dig into the ground, I'm gone. Now he actually has to go into certain select areas, so it makes it where you can chase him down and finish him off, and if you're quick enough, he will die. So the Ogre, in my opinion, it's been a long time for him to get to where he is, but where it is that he stands now is really fair, in my opinion. He's very fun to face against, regardless of whether or not you decide to end up leaving or fighting him, and I honestly think that he is a much improved version from his one self, and I think that the Ogre should be recognized as one of the best special infected in the entire game. But guys, even though I like the Ogre, there's still one special infected left that I think basically takes the cake and is pretty much perfect for this game. That is going to be the Hag. The Hag is the witch equivalent in Back 4 Blood, and this special infected is so damn fun to face, because basically they repurposed the witch to make it scary again. So we all know that in Left 4 Dead, after a while, the witch isn't exactly as scary anymore. But Back 4 Blood, the way that they did it, Turtle Rock decided to do something cheeky. They decided to basically repurpose the mechanics a little bit to make it a lot more, creepy, if you will. Basically, what they would do is that when the Hag shows up, and I didn't even know this at first. I originally just thought it would just work like a normal witch, but I found this out randomly. Basically, the Hag, if you end up playing, it will just show up randomly, and it will try to attack you. But however, though, it still functions just like the witch. It only goes for the person that shoots it, unless you get too close to it and obviously just piss it off by just proximity. So basically what happens is that, you know how the witch, it would just be fine if you left it alone, but if you got too close it would get pissed at you? The Hag does the same thing, but with one major difference. The Hag will follow you. It doesn't end up following you like the witch does, where it's kind of like random and overall like a lot less aggressive. No, the Hag will literally act like basically like those statues from, I think it's like Doctor Who or whatever, where basically if you're not looking at it, it all of a sudden just shows up. That's what the Hag does. It's really creepy. If you don't know what the Hag does, it literally will just stalk you infinitely. If you don't shoot it, it will follow you. It's not going to go away and just decide to say, F this like the way that the Ogre does. If it spawns, you're either going to have to, A, basically get completely lucky and just hope that you can get to the safe room before an instance like what I'm about to list happens, Or either the next option is you're going to have someone shoot it and kill it quick enough before it can kill you. Because if you shoot it, it will go for you until it kills you or you kill it. But also, as well, it will just stalk you. And the thing is, too, is that it will get close enough deliberately to get to pissed off range. It's not like it's going to stalk you and then just wait for, you to, like, panic shoot or anything. It literally gets close enough so that way it can get pissed off and then attack you. So it's either going to get pissed off and attack you because you're too close, or because it follows you, or because you shoot it. And dude, it's jump scared me so many times. You have no idea how much that this thing is truly creepy, especially with the lack of a music cue. This actually works out in its favor because of the fact of the lack of a music cue. But like, even though it does have some minor music, it's not, permanent, it's only temporary. If he ends up just getting even one little chance to sneak up on you, it will. It's going to just run right behind you and make you crap your pants like it did me in this clip right here. Like, look at that, it's like, oh, it's so creepy. Like, it stalks you if you don't shoot it, though. It's like it just stays in your, like, general vicinity, so that way you can, like, accidentally shoot it later. In today's video, we are going to be ranking all the maps that are in Back 4 Blood. Now, I do just want to mention just right off the rip that before we do begin, if I don't necessarily sound as peppy or a stereotypical spaz as usual, I basically am sick right now with something that I am unaware of. I've currently got a whole bunch of stuff with doctor visits and stuff like that going, so if I sound a little bit off and sound like I'm emo and dead inside, don't worry, that's only half the truth. No, I'm just kidding. But no, seriously though, I'm just trying to recover from being sick, so I do apologize in advance if I'm not as peppy as usual, but I'm not going to let that stop me from making content for you guys. By the way, guys, feel free to definitely let me know what some of your favorite maps are in Back 4 Blood. I really am curious to see what you guys personally like. This is going to be honestly more personally towards my favorite list, however, though, I did, once again, as always, keep the community's opinion in mind. I always do that with all my lists, but this one's leaning more towards opinion rather than community this time. I just want to just test out something that is slightly different and just see if that ends up impacting the list at all. But anyways, guys, let's get on, long story short, to ranking all the maps in Back 4 Blood. Alrighty guys, so coming in at the very first spot, which in my humble opinion is not exactly per se a bad map, but it's just the weakest of the bunch out of the 10 maps that we currently have in the game. And the very first map is going to end up being the map Job 1022, or as I like to call it, basically Farming Simulator, because this was the original map that everyone was doing the farming strat on for Heralds of the Worm, which is the chapter that is associated with this map. Basically, this is supposed to be a transitional map. I really don't see anything to this map other than the fact that it did one of two things. It gave basically the maps kind of like a story transition to kind of clarify some things to set you up for the next like decent big map. And also as well as just that for a while people were farming this so that way they could get supply points, but then that slowly over time got nerfed. And now you can't exactly do that anymore, and so most people just kind of use this as just basically just filler. They they want to game for a little bit, they want to like do something in 5 to 10 minutes. They can load up this map easy peasy, but literally that's all this map is. That it's just easy peasy. There's really no substance to this map. It's only 3 chapters, but it's just boss fights. It's just going to end up being Ogre, Safe Room, Breaker and Ogre, Safe Room, and then you have at least a somewhat more unique finale, where essentially you're going to be going up against modified snitches. They actually have mutation on them, where no matter what you do, they will set off an alarm, and you have to kill them to be able to set, the doctor and everything free, so that way he can be able to continue on to the next map. And I personally really think that the finale is probably the most enjoyable part about this whole entire campaign. I like the idea of the gravity of the situation. Like, you have all the snitches going around the map, and you have to be strategic about how you set them off, because they're going to set off anyway. And you also need to do it to be actually able to release the, everyone that's cooped up inside the church. But before you do that, you also have a double breaker spawn, which is pretty cool and unique. And depending on the higher the difficulty, the more intense this can be. And I remember for the longest time, me and my friend struggled on this, but as the game has gotten easier, this has gotten easier. And overall, I'd say that this is really, really fun. It's just that the thing is, though, is that it's just a cheap thrill, when in reality, there's a lot more maps that just do so much better. Alrighty guys, coming in at the next spot, this is going to be Bill Clinton's sex chamber. No, I'm just kidding. This is going to end up being the Armory. The Armory is a 2-chapter map, which is even shorter than Job 22. A lot of maps in Back 4 Blood, some of them are really, really short. Like, quite a lot of them, actually. And I really don't care for short maps. I think that they're fine every now and again, but I really think for a campaign to have value, it at least has to have 4. Sometimes 2 or 3 is fine, but in my opinion, when half the maps, or not quite half, but a good majority of them feel really short, there's a little bit of a problem there. 4 or more is usually the standard, because that means that you can end up having a beginning, and then 2 decent parts, 3 decent parts in the middle, and then a cool finale, and it gives you time to loot up, get stronger, and get better, whereas if you just load into a map that has like 2 chapters, you really can't get that well geared, especially if you start from there. So in my humble opinion, this map just doesn't really do it for me. I mean, sure, there's some cool little nifty things, like, you know, you get an exclusive melee weapon with Bob's arm, but I mean, like, it's not really that special. It's not like it's extremely overpowered or anything. You only use it for the sake of the story, which is, like, gonna be less than 5 minutes. And really, I mean, unless you're planning on doing some kinky stuff with this hand, I really don't think you can get much pleasure out of using this as anything other than a melee weapon. And even then, it's kind of like a piss-poor melee weapon. And in my humble opinion, this chapter's, like, also finale for this map is quite lackluster. It's more rather just kind of, like, just there. It's got a lot of riot gear zombies, which I don't particularly care for because it takes place at a police station. And that's just, you know, that's, you know, canonically correct. But I don't really like that. I don't really like when my zombies are essentially basically, like, armored to the teeth. I really would much rather have them be, like, you know, generic, easy to kill, one-tap zombies. Kind of like how they already are in Back 4 Blood, where it's like, you know, 1 bullet can kill them. But the problem is, though, is that sometimes the director is just being like, hey, I want to be annoying today. And that seems to be a lot like when it comes to this map, because I almost always get annoying mutations on this map. But yes, of course, the game is once again tuned down, and I'm basing it more rather based off of the actual map than the core gameplay. But however, though, is that those are kind of a intertwined yin and yang situation where whatever the current state of the game is, the game can just make a certain map not fun. Like, for example, this was a couple weeks ago. Heralds of the Worm, I would have been a lot more harsher on, just because of the fact is that when they nerfed it uber hard and basically made Job 1022 basically unbearable. But that's just, like, going to be subject to change. Hell, I mean, I know that later on in the next coming few months, hell, even weeks, that this list is probably going to be different because of the fact that they're going to be changing the game around. It's not like it's all set in stone like how Left 4 Dead is. But way I see it right now, this map is just too short, too boring, and really, honestly, it's just kind of like not something I really feel the urge to play unless I'm just trying to mix things up. Alrighty guys, now coming in for the next spot, this is going to be the Dark Before the Dawn. This is once again going to end up being another 2-chapter map. And for me personally, this one is better, significantly more so than the Armory is. But the Dark Before the Dawn is kind of, once again, like another transitional map. A lot of the short maps in this game feel like filler. And that's not necessarily a bad thing, because with this game is that they're more focused on story, and so sometimes you need to end up having shorter maps to get the point across. You don't need to have it be overdrawn out. But I still would appreciate more effort going into them, because you can definitely make it a little bit longer, even if it was by, like, another chapter. You'll significantly, there's a huge difference, in my opinion, between a 2-chapter map and a 3-chapter map. People end up playing on 2-chapter maps, they think of things like The Last Stand and Crash Course. 3 chapters, usually that's something that is on more the side of getting rounded up, and that's like something like The Passing, which The Passing can feel relatively long at times, being only 1 chapter difference. It's just that beginning to finale is just, it feels kind of rushed, and that's kind of the case with this map, is that it just feels, once again, a little bit too short to get set up. Although, be it, the finale does have a lot of epic loot for you, because the whole entire premise is that you're having a holdout at the diner, which is cool. I do like that concept, and does make it very rewarding after, you know, carrying the supply boxes for a while throughout the second chapter. But the problem is with this that it still doesn't make it any longer of a map. It really is just to set up the, you know, beginning for Blue Dog Hollow, because that's the map that comes shortly right after this. And in my humble opinion, the map is not a bad map. It really just suffers from being too short. That is really, honestly, my biggest caveat with it. It's not boring. I like the finale quite a lot. I like the idea of having a epic holdout at the diner with basically one of everything. It basically feels like survival at the diner, because they literally give you one of everything. And I also like the fact that you can use some fun stuff such as the minigun, which you really don't get to use too often, unless you happen to end up finding it basically inside of a, you know, a box. And then again, you have to lug that thing around, and so unless you happen to find it already in a spot you're going to be camping for a while, such as in a finale in this case, then a lot of people don't get to use those things that often. And so I think that this is honestly probably going to be the best of for a lot of things, despite it being, you know, kind of flawed at being only so long.
That's what she said!
Even when I'm sick, I still have enough creativity to figure out a way to slide a dick joke in pretty much almost all my videos. But yeah, guys, so that is going to be the next spot there. But now we gotta move on to the next map here. And in my opinion, the next best map that's on the list is going to be Dr. Rogers' Neighborhood. So, for Dr. Rogers' Neighborhood, what do I have to say about this map? Well, other than making me think of Mr. Rogers, because the name is so damn similar, I like to say that this map gets points just straight off the rip for just being super long in comparison to the last couple maps, because this is 5 chapters. A lot longer and a lot more longer in terms of like the playtime and the just overall setting up process. I really do like that. It gives a lot more, you know, oomph to the map. It feels like you actually can enjoy it for longer and be able to actually experience the game for longer and not just do like basically like these quick little pick-me-ups. I enjoy actually being able to kind of like binge and sit down for a while on a map and play for like an hour at a time, and the longer maps definitely allow me to do that. Now, this particular map does have a lot of elements that can make it tedious at times, most notably the finale, because the finale is kind of a little bit difficult, even on the easiest of modes, just because the problem is that you're taking, once again, more supply boxes and trying to shove them in the back of a car, which initially sounds easy. The problem is that this is all scattered around a giant-ass mansion on 3 different floors, and there's also always an ogre that's waiting outside the front of the house. And since you're trying to try your best to get these all within a reasonable time into the car, because otherwise you're just going to constantly keep getting swarmed by zombies, you feel under pressure to just kind of rush and not really think. And I don't mind that type of mentality, but I prefer that on a map where I'm always moving. I don't like the idea of kind of like thinking on the fly in a camping-based finale, because you can't really escape the action. It's not like you were running into action and also being able to escape it at the same time. Because when you're on a rushing finale, like let's say, if I were to reference Left 4 Dead here, like with the Parish Bridge, when you're trying to pursue you know, to like, you know, go through the hordes to try to get to the helicopter on the other side, you're leaving just as much action behind you as much as you're seeking it out. So there's always going to be enemies in front of you, but you're also leaving the ones that are behind you just so that way you don't have to worry about getting like constantly overwhelmed. You're basically forgetting about them. And occasionally you might, you know, turn around and like pop a couple zombies that are lingering behind you. The problem is that when you have constant zombie hordes on top of you in a camping finale, it feels overwhelming, especially when there's a giant ogre outside waiting to basically Kobe you at any given moment, and he's right next to the truck. So essentially you have mainly 3 things opposing you the whole entire time, which is endless hordes, a giant boss zombie that's waiting to bitch slap you, and you also have the just pure pressure of just in your mind being on a timer that you really shouldn't have to be on. And it's not an easy map by any means. I mean, I've beaten this as far into as veteran, and I want to try to also beat on Nightmare eventually. And I can only assume it's going to get harder from here. Now, I'm not trying to base this, like I said, off of difficulty. I'm just basing off just the pure concept. But that's not necessarily what this map is all about. It's not like I think, oh yeah, because of the finale, you know, it sucks. It's still a good finale. I like the concept that all the maps have their own place in Back 4 Blood. But overall, just the map does kind of give off what feels like a blood harvest type of vibe. It's very foresty, very, nature-based. And there's some cool things, like I actually really do like the one chapter where there's actually a maze. And the cool thing about the maze too is that it always changes every time you load up that map. So it's never going to be the same every single time, which I like that because it makes it very, very different to play on each time. Because even though I have a general guesstimate on like however many patterns there is, because there only is so many I would like to believe, I would like to say is that it's enough variety that it makes it always feel fresh. This is like the director at its peak. Because in Left 4 Dead, we all know that sometimes certain areas can be closed off, and then you have to take an alternative route. The maze being always ever changing is the best example I can give of the map changing with the director. Because it's literally the perfect idea. You're essentially getting lost, and your muscle memory is not something you can rely on here. You have to be able to think on the fly. And the muscle memory can only really kick in once you've played it enough times to be able to give proper educational guesses, and I really like that concept. So overall, the map has a lot of good things going for it, and I'd say that overall is that it's not that bad personally. It's almost at the halfway point in terms of a great map. It's not quite my favorite map. It's not even really like actually that quite good of a map. It is just kind of one of those average ones. It's basically like I said, it's like a blood harvest. Not really that memorable, but it definitely is cool nonetheless. Alright, now we've got the map Plan B, and I know this is gonna sound bad in terms of the review, but I promise you it's just only a name thing. I legitimately forgot which map this was at first, like literally just like 5 seconds right before recording this part. And it's not that I don't like the map, it's just that the names for these maps I honestly think are not the best. Like, I only remember probably like half of them by actual name by heart. It took me a while to remember the special infected, so I'm pretty sure I'll get there eventually with the maps, but damn, the maps really need better names. But anyways, we're moving on to this map, so Plan B. Plan B, in my opinion, is probably going to be where we're starting to get probably to the pretty decent maps. I'd say that half of the maps are actually quite good, and this is kind of like the last, like, average one, but more towards the side of good. It's pretty interchangeable, I'd say. Basically, this map, one of the main reasons why I like it is just because the last 2 chapters feel quite very well paced. They feel like they really flow, and you can see how even the things like the environment slowly starts to emerge over time. You can see things in the background, and then eventually you make your way towards it. Kind of like how on No Mercy, you see No Mercy Hospital in the distance, and then eventually, even though you're at like the streets, you make your way all the way up till there, eventually. And when it comes to this map, you're eventually slowly but surely getting more towards the water, or kind of like the coast. And it's cool because when you get there eventually, you can kind of see like this, almost like what it's like as a water-based community. There's basically a whole bunch of like rubble and trash everywhere. And it's like leftovers from like a previous group when, like there was a whole bunch of disasters and stuff. But it's kind of like made like this on the water, like makeshift land base. And it's kind of a cool thing to see and play on. You're basically playing on a floating island of trash, but even though that sounds initially bad, it feels very, truly apocalyptic? Yeah, there we go. This was where I was looking for. I almost said apocalyptic. But, anywho, basically, it feels very, very, very true to nature to zombies. This feels like a legitimate area that I would see in a zombie apocalypse. But the reason why I like it so much is because not only does it feel very zombie apocalypse-like, we never really seen anything like this before. And overall, it feels very unique to me that way. I've always liked the idea of water. It's very relaxing and nature-based to me, so maybe that's kind of just why I like it, because a lot of this map does have a lot of water elements. But in my humble opinion is that despite the water elements and my own personal bias, the map just overall just feels good and just paces well. Like, the whole entire map feels like that. Like, the map has 5 chapters once again, so it does feel quite long and enjoyable to play on. You can get a lot of good loot, etc., etc. but I just overall like the theme of it. I like the pacing, the length, and the theme, and it just really makes for a map that is more towards memorable. Not quite. I really honestly don't remember half the maps that fondly yet, because, I mean, keep in mind the game is new. But 5 of them, the next 5, I do really truly like, and we're going to be getting to them here in just a second. Alrighty guys, now this is where we're starting to get into the maps that I personally think are really memorable and stuff that I like. So actually at the halfway point is going to be just the Abomination boss fight, because technically the Abomination boss fight is just its own map in its entirety. It is specifically just the last map in the whole entire campaign. When you play all the acts, is the final act in the game, and you end up having such a long boss fight that they just treat it as its own thing. It's the big epic conclusion from the cliffhanger from the last map that you played where the helicopter crashed. And basically, you end up going through a slew of different phases trying to fight just basically one giant boss zombie. You have the giant 4 tentacles that are coming out of the ground, and you have to shoot its mouths, so that way they eventually will end up being injured and just kind of receding into the ground, but they're still dangerous because they have acid spewing out of them, and once you get all 4, they eventually sink back into the ground, and there's 4 holes you can jump into, which take you to the true, basically, beginning of the Abomination boss fight, where the Abomination's face is sticking out in a giant pile of flesh, and you have to shoot the pus spores that are inside of its mouth. And it does once again use its tentacles to try to like slam you and spew acid at you, and you're kind of almost in like this little boss arena. You're kind of in this confined space. And then after you finally do that, you have one more phase where now the Abomination is running away from you and actually heading towards Fort Hope, and you have a 5-minute timer to try to kill him before he gets there, otherwise you win or you lose. So it's a lot of actually last second clutch timing that is going to be on your part, because there's 4 pus spores that are around him, and you have to be able to blow these up to officially kill him. So depending on your experience, this can either be a really tough or quite an easy boss fight for you. But the good news is, though, is that it's extremely memorable, because keep in mind is that if you're a Left 4 Dead fan as much as you are a Back 4 Blood fan, you will know that Left 4 Dead only got as far as having basically the witch and the tank for bosses, where this is actually just a full-on boss fight with the Abomination. This is literally just a actual legitimate boss fight. He has his own mission, he's got different phases, he's super damn strong, and you don't want to mess with him. He's really, really dangerous, and he will beat your ass if you're not careful. It's not a pushover boss. But however, though, if you memorize his pattern and you genuinely are good at the game will reward you for that. Right now, currently, me and Jake grind him as the new grinding method for trying to get supply points, because even though he actually is still a pretty decent boss, he's actually got a lot of pattern recognition. Out of everything in Back 4 Blood, other than the occasional special infected that are just assisting the Abomination boss fight is the exact same every single time. 4 tentacles, destroy the mouths, eventually fall into the holes, shoot the pus spores in the giant, mouth that he's got, and then eventually he tries to run away. You have 5 minutes or less to be able to kill him, or you win or lose, and that's it, and you rinse and repeat, and it's never different, which makes it really, really consistent for grinding, and it's fun, and since it also is always the same, the boss fight never gets bad or, annoying, because you eventually just grow to like it because you can get used to it over time. Yes, initially you might suck and then therefore might not like it, but once you get good at it, since it doesn't change, you will actually get really almost addicted to it, because the boss fight is already fun as it is, but once you get good at it and you can grind it and you can actually like benefit off of it, it's really addictive to play. I just enjoy playing the boss fights sometimes. So overall, I think Turtle Rock, honestly to God, did a pretty good job on the Abomination. And I like the fact that, honestly, it kind of its own thing, because it was tied to one of the campaigns. It might have felt a little bit overkill, but I think that they honestly knocked it out of the park. I look forward to seeing whatever else that they got in mind, because the Abomination was a really cool zombie, and I honestly still think it's one of the coolest things that's about this game in its entirety. Alrighty guys, now we're going to be going on to the next map, and this is going to end up being Remnants. Remnants is one of my personal favorite maps in Back 4 Blood, and this is where we're starting to get more into the maps that I actually am remembering because I associate good memories with them. This is a fun map. Remnants has a lot of good things going for it, and most notably my favorite thing is actually not even necessarily something you might expect. It's actually just going to be just one of the chapters. So specifically the final chapter right before the actual main finale part, the last normal one, which is going to be Road to Hell. Road to Hell is a really fun chapter in this game. Essentially, the plot behind this specific chapter is that right before the finale, you're essentially going through this militarized quarantine zone where basically everyone was held prisoners initially back when the apocalypse first started happening, and now what you have to do is you have to basically go through the prison, the makeshift prison, like with all the, you know, the security checks and the checkpoints, and you actually have to try to get through the finale this way in this giant cramped security tunnel. And it's actually really intense this way because you are essentially doing what is considered a rushing-based finale type of logic inside of just a normal chapter. You're trying to, within a confined space that's almost like very similar layout to the Parish Bridge, funnily enough, you're trying to navigate to the safe room. And it's a really cool concept. And honestly, if this was actually a finale and they had like a helicopter at the end or something, I wouldn't be mad. I can actually, this is a finale level chapter, in my opinion, because it's got that same core essence of run, because no one's going to save you. You have to save yourself. I like those independent maps every now and again because they're rare. And I really think that this chapter makes this map for me, personally. Is that I like the map already as it is. I like the fact that you gotta go through the school and you gotta be able to try to survive that way. This is where you also find things like the piano Easter egg and stuff like that. I do enjoy the fact that we do have a guaranteed ogre boss fight inside of basically the basketball court. I enjoy the fact that you have the cool cutscene where you're actually coming down into the magic school bus, basically, you know, down a giant hill, and you somehow survive the crash. I really do like this map for a lot of reasons, but specifically the Road to Hell part is honestly my favorite. But even then, I still do like the finale, because in the finale you get actually a specific new grenade that's only tied to this specific part, and that's called T5. And basically, these are going to be custom grenades that basically make all the zombies weaker. You throw it, and it's like this gas grenade, and everything, including things like the ogre, are significantly weaker to your bullets. And basically what you try to do is that you try to proceed throughout the finale as normal, and you're basically trying to destroy pods and try to kill the infected, but you got this cool new grenade now in your pocket, and it's only available on this map on its finale. It's extremely unique. So it makes the map actually worth playing because you actually not only have a great finale, but you also got specifically a custom grenade that is only available on said finale. Because even though it's limited and you might get a little bit annoyed being like, oh, I should be able to bring it everywhere, then, you know, that doesn't make the map for you. Because if the map has something specific to it, that's not bad game design. It means that it was a good idea that they want to make special tied to the map to incentivize you to play it more. It just depends on, I guess, your perspective of a glass half full or glass half empty, but the way that they did in this game is more rather fun rather than annoying, and it makes it work, because now I'm thinking to myself being like, I already like this map, but if I'm ever in the mood to use any of its like limited custom content or play on a specific chapter like Road to Hell, I know exactly where to go. This map is fun, it's unique, it's challenging, it feels very unique and fun. Overall, this map is one of my personal favorites, and I really do like it in Back 4 Blood. Alrighty guys, now even though I do like myself some Remnants, these next three maps are personally going to be the most replayable in my opinion, because I already do this subconsciously. I've looked at a lot of my like background footage, like leftovers, just like on my hard drive, and I've noticed that whenever I end up making a video and I need background gameplay, I tend to go to these maps just not only because they're fun, but they're also just easy, and they're less, you know, annoyance to actually have to go through, because every map has their good and their bad parts about it, but some are obviously more addictive and fun than others, and I really don't have any bad things to say about these next coming few maps. So when it comes to the last three, coming in at the next spot, this is going to end up being Search and Rescue. Now with Search and Rescue, this is the second map of the first act, and Search and Rescue has only 3 chapters, so it is a shorter one, but like I said, you can kind of round off 3 for 4. Basically, this is going to end up being a shorter map, but it feels pretty decent, so that I like. And this map, in my opinion, has a couple of great things going for it, but most notably, the one thing that I do really like for it is its finale. Because the finale, in my opinion, is one of the most fun in the entire game. I would say, other than the finale for Remnants and the finale for Evansburg, and there's also the Abomination boss fight, but I would say that this is probably one of my other favorite finales in the entire game, because it does a lot of what Dark Carnival did, basically. I feel like this was kind of meant to be a spiritual successor in honoring Dark Carnival, because what they do is that they have you kill zombies to music. Because what happens is that in the finale, you end up trying to escort a bus full of survivors. So your group needs to cause a distraction. So what you do is you end up going to a diner, or basically a small restaurant, and you have to play the jukebox to try to distract the zombies while you're escorting people out that you just rescued. And that is the entire idea of this whole entire map. You, in the first chapter, rescue people. The second chapter, you rescue people. In the third one, you help them escape by causing a distraction with this jukebox. And the cool news is that this jukebox, even though it does suck for copyright, this jukebox plays a lot of fun music while you're trying to survive. Because it plays a whole bunch of just licensed songs. Most notably, my favorite one personally is the Ace of Spades, which is just really, really cool to kill zombies to. Like, legitimately, that's, like, really badass to do. Now, it does suck if you happen to be a YouTuber or a streamer, because if you have the music on, you will get a claim, and that does suck. But it's not nearly as bad as it was before, because before, for some reason, the music was under the sound effects, and before, to mute the music, you had to turn off all your game sound, essentially, other than just voice lines, so the game felt like weird Back for Blood ASMR. But now it's actually under its own tab in the music. So the game actually can just progress as normal, and you just don't have any music. You would just play it as if, like, there was just no jukebox. You would just be essentially, like, holding out in the diner while just people are just trying to get on the bus in the background, which makes it feel more than, like, an actual finale. Because that, honestly, before they fixed that, would honestly make it or break it for me on this map. Because the fact that I either had to listen to copyright music, or basically listen to crappy, weird Back for Blood ASMR, that really did suck. But now that they fixed it, the map is actually enjoyable more in that way. And I also do just like the fact that you can actually get, like, introduced to the Breaker in this particular map, because in the very first chapter, right at the very beginning, you have a guaranteed Breaker spawn, and you kind of get introduced to him, kind of like how on the first map, Evansburg, you have a guaranteed Ogre spawn in this, and the second chapter. And it makes it feel like that it's welcoming you into the crap that's going to throw your way later. It's just being like, this is the director, and this is what it wants to do to you. So yeah, it's just like, I think in my opinion overall, the map doesn't really feel too overwhelming, and I feel like it's like a perfect balance of like challenge and also just pure fun. I love the finale especially, I really, really do. Alrighty guys, coming in at the number 2 spot, this is going to end up being Blue Dog Hollow. Now, for me personally, I think that Blue Dog Hollow is a really good map, and I'm really glad that this was the beta map, because the beta map, in my opinion, with Blue Dog here, this was a really good way to introduce everybody to the game. Because when you end up making a alpha or a beta for a game, and you have a select handful of maps, and you have to pick basically some of your best maps to get people interested in buying the game, and you have to decide which ones to pick, I feel like that Blue Dog was definitely one of the best to choose. Because if it was any of the other given maps, it would be very hard to do without giving away the story. Blue Dog just fits in a perfect place where it doesn't give away the story, but it is really fun to play on. Because originally, when you play, the game, you played on Evansburg, which was at the beginning of the game, and then Blue Dog is at the beginning of the game, sure, but it is kind of starting to get more towards the halfway point. It's actually going to end up being the final map in Act 1, and that's why the story didn't actually match up at first in the beta. If you notice, like the transition map to map, I thought it was a direct cut, but it didn't match up, and I was thinking to myself, being like, this is confusing. But it was not enough to be able to be uberly confusing. It didn't also spoil anything. And obviously it's not going to be like, in the beta, you're also going to fight the Abomination. But they could have done anything. They could have made the, the map Remnants. They could have made it Search and Rescue. They could have done a lot of things. But they decided to pick specifically Blue Dog. And in my opinion, this was one of the best things they could do, because Blue Dog is 4 chapters long, which was also the same length as Evansburg or The Devil's Return. And it made it so that way it felt decently long. The map overall has really good flow, and I do think that every chapter definitely is unique in its own regard. and it makes it so that way you can be able to end up getting used to it. I remember the chapters very distinctly. You got the beginning where you're in, the little, diner from last time, and then you also end up having it where you have to go through the forest until eventually you gotta destroy these spores, when then eventually you destroy the one on the bridge until you get to the RV with the, crazy lady and her husband Ben. Then you have to go through the tunnels, then you got the giant, truck full of turtle plushies for, Turtle Rock Easter egg. Then you gotta go through the forest, which usually ends up having a hag in it. And then after that, you gotta go to the church, which the church I do think is actually kind of cool. This is personally one of my favorite events, is that you actually have to go into the church, and the safe room's not already safe. You actually have to make it safe. So as you go in, the church bell rings, you gotta board up the windows as it's happening. You're like in the safe room, but it's not quite safe yet. The safe room is the actual like event itself, which is really, really cool. Then after that, of course, you end up progressing until you eventually have to start going up the mine, and you eventually have to end up, like, blowing up, spots in the mine after you've already gone through basically, like, hell on Earth. Because other than the Road to Hell chapter, this is probably one of the more tougher chapters. It's the third one on Blue Dog, because you actually have to destroy the spores that are in the one house, and immediately after that, run through basically a pathway where after you use the one tow truck to lift the thing out of your way, and then you have to go all the way up the mine shafts while blowing up barrels to block off all the leftover caves, so that way zombies don't come out and chase you, until eventually you then get to the safe room. And then finally, on the finale, you have to blow up the final tunnel with an artillery gun, Crash Course style, and keep loading in artillery shells, and then eventually you can escape. Really, really cool map, and it shows you that I really do like it because I remember everything I just listed off the top of my head just like that. So, Blue Dog has a lot of great things going for it, and I think that honestly, it's probably one of the most memorable maps in the entire game, but there is still one last map. Alrighty guys, now before we do get into the final #1 spot here, I do just want to end up mentioning just one more thing, is that if you guys happen to have enjoyed the video so far, at the end, before you do take off, I would definitely appreciate if you guys could drop a like. I wanted to do something similar to what I did in a Left 4 Dead ranking video one time. It was funnily enough also ranking Left 4 Dead maps. But randomly at one point in the video, as a one-off, I was actually just kind of like, hey, you know what? If you guys have watched a certain amount of length into the video, comment like, a random number at like the recording. I think it was like 47 minutes. So right now, if you guys could actually end up doing me a favor, I want to do a test comparison to the logic of that video. And if you guys could say something like 35 minutes in the comment section so I can see how far you guys got into the video, so that way I can see whether or not you guys were enjoying, that'd be really, really cool. So just do me a favor and comment 35 minutes if you not only enjoyed, but just let me know how far you got. But anyways, mostly after that, back to the video. Alrighty guys, so coming in at the #1 spot, this is finally going to end up being Bill Clinton's sex chamber. No, I'm just kidding. I bet you were surprised that I brought that joke back twice. But no, seriously, this is going to end up being Evansburg, or in this case, the Devil's Return, as it's technically officially called. Funny how that they did change this map's name. But originally in the alpha was called Evansburg, and I'm still going to call it Evansburg. But basically, the Devil's Return, or Evansburg, the first map of the actual game is my favorite. Like, legitimately, the very first map in the entire game is my favorite. It's 4 chapters long, but it overall, in general, this one, out of every single map in the entire game, this feels the most like Left 4 Dead to me. If I were to compare this to Left 4 Dead, out of all the maps, this would be the map I would use as my example. This map is very much like Left 4 Dead in my opinion, because it doesn't throw you into all the over-the-top Back 4 Blood stuff. It hasn't gotten there yet. The game just started. So what it is that you start off in basically like a little like hotel, almost kind of like NSenr, where basically you're trying to get back once again with your group. Funnily enough, NSenr is also 4 chapters. This is 4 chapters. Then eventually what ends up happening is that you slowly but surely have to try to get to rescue. You're not sure if you're going to actually have rescue. Starting to see the similarities? Then after what happens with the rescue is that you have a guaranteed ogre boss fight. This is probably the most unique part about it, just because of the fact that you end up having basically a guaranteed boss fight. And this introduces you to one of the brand new zombies in the game. The ogre, even though it's not the abomination, it's still a zombie you don't want to mess with, and you can either choose to A, run from it, or you can choose to fight it. And it's cool because you kind of get to see how your choices evolve, because when you play this in the alpha, a lot of people, including myself, just ran, and the dialogue in the game kind of implies that you should do that. but now I actually fight the ogre, and it's actually kind of a cool thing to see that, you know, the development within my own character myself. And I overall think that this is a pretty cool start to the map so far. Now when you end up getting into the third chapter, this is going to end up being, it really honestly, this in my opinion, probably going to be the peak chapter right before the finale, because the chapters actually are just getting better over time. They're getting more fun and crazy. And when it comes to the third chapter, I really do like the panic event. I do like the idea of basically the, you know, the sand piling up, and you actually have to wait for the sand to pile up before you can actually climb over a cargo crate, so that way you can be able to run into the safe room. Because it's very bare bones. Nothing like over the top crazy or anything. You're not doing anything like overly stupid to try to like somehow seek salvage or rescue. And you're actually just trying to just use something within your environment, something that would be natural. And it's very creative, though, at the same time, like being like, hey, you know, I wouldn't expect to end up breaking that if I were in this real-life situation here. That's actually kind of neat. And I think that the chapter does allow you to be able to have a lot of freedom here, because you can either choose to camp in the area, or if you want to, you can actually be able to, you know, take some loot like a minigun and retreat a little bit and be able to camp. You can also end up going to things such as the toolkit rooms and be able to hide in there. Or if you even want to, there is a option to actually use the horde summoning event as itself as a shortcut, because you can actually end up going onto the sand when it's only so much tall, and you can actually be able to still jump over the cargo crate anyways, which is pretty cool. So you can also cheese this, which is also really nice if you want to speedrun by your choice. Then, of course, we've got the finale. In my opinion, this is also one of my favorite finales, because the finale feels like a mixture of, basically what it feels like is a mixture of the parish / also going to end up being an objective campaign, kind of like The Last Stand or NSenr, where basically you have a mission to complete. You have to do the running part, which is basically just getting on the bridge. Once again, another bridge type of finale, where you actually have to run to rescue. But instead, at the very end, you are tasked with one last thing. You have to take a bomb, sometimes 2 bombs, depending if you're playing single or multiplayer, and you have to blow up the bridge, so that way they actually can't have the zombies follow you. And that is really, really cool, because it makes sense. Because the zombies aren't, of course, just going to leave you alone. I can see this legitimately being a thing you would do in real life. So you and one other player, or just by yourself, depending on whether or not what mode you're playing, have to take bombs and blow up the, you know, the bridge. You got to blow up the ship. So you actually have to now go back to where you just tried to run for your life, and actually now try to survive to do this objective, which honestly is probably really cool and unique, because I haven't really found that type of enjoyment out of the other ones. And then while you're doing that and trying to survive already, whatever health you got left, you need to use that, because you have now 1 minute to get off of the ship before it blows up with you on it, and you actually have to then get back to rescue while somehow managing to keep all your teammates alive, hopefully, if you can, which isn't always necessarily a guarantee. And then when you do complete this, inevitably, you're going to be introduced with a cool cutscene, which is going to allow you to be able to see the beginning of Back 4 Blood. Because technically, the beginning of Back 4 Blood is really honestly after this map, because one of the cutscenes that plays at the end is that it shows you every single one of the characters that you have yet to unlock, you know, Doc, Jim, Hoffman, and also Carly, and you get to be able to see basically like who they're like, what the, you know, maps are going to be like in the future, etc., etc. So this is basically another way of them saying, hey, welcome to the game. So yeah, that's basically it. That's pretty much why I like Evansburg, and honestly, I think this is my favorite map in the game. Let me know what you think in the comment section down below. What I'm going to be ranking here in today's video specifically is going to end up being the Back 4 Blood equipment, because when it comes to Back 4 Blood, the DLC is still yet to be completed, so there still is going to be a little bit more before the annual pass is done. But I thought, hey, you know what, there's enough grenades in the game at this point, there's enough medical supplies in the game at this point, so why not do this in the middle of the DLC? So I hope you guys end up enjoying this video nonetheless. If you end up enjoying today's video and you do want to see more Back 4 Blood rankings return, just let me know by dropping a like. I'd be more than happy to bring these back again. I decided to have this be kind of like the testing ground, so whatever this video ends up getting as a response, I'll just count that as what you guys would like to see. But yeah, I hope you end up enjoying today's video. Alrighty, so let's start off with the very first piece of equipment, which is by far absolutely, without a doubt, the worst one in the entire game. And it sucks because this is one of the brand new ones, but this is going to end up being the smoke grenade. The smoke grenade is a piece of equipment that basically will serve no purpose to you in accordance with the way that most players play. because the idea is behind the smoke grenade is that you were supposed to conceal your movements so that way special infected and normal zombies will not attack you. Actually, let me correct myself. I would assume that it would be special infected that would also protect you from, but no, it is actually not. It is only just the common infected. Therefore, basically taking away one of the most critical features of this smoke grenade, which would be to conceal you from the most threatening zombie that could kill you, but unfortunately, it's just the bare bones zombies that are only going to end up being affected by this. Therefore, leaving the special infected still able to kill you and making this grenade pointless to have in your inventory. I understand what Turtle Rock was trying to achieve here with the smoke grenade, but given the way that Back 4 Blood just is, I mean, the way that the game plays, this grenade just isn't useful, because the special infected are the main problem. Now, if they ended up buffing this thing so that way one day it does end up concealing you from the special infected, then this would be one of the best pieces of equipment in the entire game, but just removing that one thing makes this the worst because you don't end up using it. You could use anything else in the entire game and it would serve you so much better than just the smoke. And see, the smoke grenade, it could have been so much more. That's the disappointing thing about it. But just because of that one thing, it automatically takes it down from one of the best just to making it at the very bottom of the list. I hope one day that Turtle Rock will end up buffing this thing because I would love to make this grenade useful for the way I'm imagining it in my head. But sadly, until then, for as it stands right now, this is the worst piece of equipment in the game, and you should not pick this up if I were you. Okay, now moving on to the second spot, and this piece of equipment is pretty much no better, but it at least is better than the smoke grenade. This is also going to be a brand new piece of equipment, and this is going to end up being the bear trap. Now, if only this thing was as effective as when the enemies use it, because my leg is completely broken off after being stuck in this so many times. But sadly, this piece of equipment, when you use it, is not nearly as good as when the cultist people use it, because the zombies usually will go around it, or just flat out ignore it. For example, you will see in this breaker clip, where this breaker completely ignores my bear trap. He just walks right over it and does not give a single fuck. The bear trap is once again one of those pieces of equipment, just like the smoke grenade, where you can sure use it. It's not an utterly completely useless tool. It can serve some benefit to you. But with the way that Back 4 Blood it just is, with the director and the way that the game plays, and just given the fact of knowing what other players would like to use, the bear trap is only ever going to end up serving the enemies and never going to be a benefit to you unless they end up buffing it somehow, but unfortunately until then you're better off using razor wire. Okay, so now that we got those two pieces of equipment out of the way, let's move on to the next one, which this one is not that bad, but it's very niche, so you'll ever really only need to use it once, and this is going to end up being the stun gun. Now, the stun gun is something that you would use and substitute to a card, because there's plenty of cards that allow you to get breakout abilities, or you can just play as Evangelo where you get them by default. But the stun gun is a equipment version of those breakout abilities. The thing is with the stun gun is that the stun gun is only ever useful if you are either a bad player, or 2, if you don't have the cards to substitute the stun gun, which I don't end up running into either circumstance, and I don't think that you would either if you happen to be watching this video and you are a long-term Back 4 Blood player, because the Back 4 Blood players at this point have already gotten used to the game and they realize that they don't need the stun gun anymore. The stun gun is very much just a piece of equipment that when you don't have anything else, and that way you just don't have an empty slot, but once you use it, because the stun gun only is a 1 to 2 time use really anyway. So why would you invest your copper into something that's going to end up being used temporarily when you can end up investing into something that's going to end up being carried with you for a long time within the game? Because that's just the way I see it personally. Speaking of temporary equipment, moving on to our next spot here, this is going to end up being the ammo box. The ammo box pretty much serves the exact same purpose as the stun gun. It's supposed to be a temporary use thing. You're not meant to keep this thing long term, although you kind of can with the ammo box because it pretty much just serves as extended inventory to your ammo. I would only recommend keeping ammo on you if you were either A, using a gun that didn't have a lot of ammo to begin with, B, you are in a situation where you're ending up playing in nightmare mode and you really do need the ammo, or lastly is I would only recommend keeping it at the very beginning of the game when you're first starting out and you don't have any other equipment, such as for example if you are playing as Hoffman who spawns in with an ammo box by default. But after all those situations, you really don't need the ammo box anymore. Now for our next spot, we have got the bait jar, which is Back 4 Blood's version of the bile bomb. Now the bile bomb of this game is the exact same functionality-wise as the Left 4 Dead one, so you would think that it would be good. Here's the thing, is that it's not really, because in Back 4 Blood, it's not that the bait jar is inherently bad, it's just that there's other things that are better. And the way that the game also is designed, this doesn't accommodate Back 4 Blood like it does with Left 4 Dead. The way that Left 4 Dead functioned with the director and their special infected, the Bile Bomb worked for that game. Trying to bring those functionalities, though, over to Back 4 Blood, it just doesn't work the same. Back 4 Blood is quicker and more crazy than Left 4 Dead ever was, even in its highest difficulties, and so when you try to end up using this, sure, it can end up taking the zombies off of you for a second, but that's all it really does. It just gets the zombies off of you for a second, and then you end up having them eventually attack you again, and then you have the exact same problems. The firecrackers are even more useful in this game because they at least last longer, so I would at the least get the firecrackers over the bait jar. I think that if they want the bait jar to compete with the other grenades, they need to buff it drastically, because every single piece of equipment they have added in with this new DLC, all are way too weak. The smoke grenade, the bear trap, and the bait jar all have to be severely buffed, otherwise they will remain pretty much useless in this game. Because I don't see anybody pick them up, I don't see anybody use them, and really the only time I've seen them be effective is when the cultist people use them on me, and that's it. So Turtle Rock, if you're watching this video, please buff the equipment so that way they're more competitive with the other ones, otherwise you're just going to have people rocking frags all the time again. And now we end up moving on to, unfortunately, what was one of my favorite Left 4 Dead pieces of equipment, and it's one of my least favorites in this game. This is going to end up being the Molotov cocktail. The Molotov got massacred in this game, man. It's just such a bad piece of equipment in comparison to what I know it could be. The Left 4 Dead Molotov is my absolute favorite thing to end up using in that game, because it's just so satisfying to light things like a tank on fire. It's something that I carry with me all the time. You guys will know this by watching my videos. I love the Molotov in Left 4 Dead. But the Back 4 Blood one just feels like puny. It feels so weak. It feels like that I'm not taking lighter fluid to the zombies. It feels like that I'm taking like a water balloon to the zombies. It just sits there on the floor, and even the passive burning effect really doesn't do anything. The zombies just instead decide to glow neon orange. That's all I notice. If the Molotov just had a bit more damage and it had a longer burn effect, or hell, even if it had like a permanent burn effect like the original Left 4 Dead one did, that would make the Molotov so much more useful. I would love that, dude. But until that day, rest in peace, Molotov. Okay, next we end up having Band-Aids, and Band-Aids are just Band-Aids. It's expected that they would be higher up on the list given the fact they're a medical item. It's just that the thing is, though, that I've noticed throughout the entire list, while I'll end up talking about the equipment here, that the cards very much impact how the list ends up turning out, because the equipment in this game can be easily replaced by a card. So depending on whether or not there's a card that replaces the equipment, that's where I'm going to actually move it, because if you end up having a card, why not use it so you can maximize your space? Because otherwise it would be a little redundant to rock the same thing. So I'm going to end up ranking these very influenced by the cards, but the Band-Aid is still useful regardless if you have cards, because you're inevitably going to take damage anyway, especially in the higher difficulties, and every little bit of your HP counts. And now we circle back to the firecrackers. This is how the Bile Bomb should have been, and that's really why I like the firecrackers, is because they are the better version of the Bile Bomb. They're just firecrackers instead. It's pretty straightforward, nothing else really needs to be said about these things. Now at the next spot here, we end up having the Razor Wire. Razor Wire in the right circumstance is one of the best pieces of equipment in the entire game, especially if you upgrade it, because Razor Wire will slow down every single type of zombie, minus a few exceptions such as the Tall Boys and the Breaker. But here's the thing with the Razor Wire, is that it's extremely beneficial to you on camping maps. Like if you end up having purple Razor Wire on the diner, you just win. You just flat out win, because that map is so easy, especially with the Razor Wire. It's ridiculous how effective it is, because you will just form like landmine type of layouts with this Razor Wire and the zombies can't get to you. It's overpowered to a certain degree, and then watch, I'm talking all these great things and Turtle Rock's going to nerf it. But jokes aside, Razor Wire is extremely fun to use in the right circumstances. I still use it to this day. It's just that I only use it on pretty much like 2 maps, but those 2 maps though, when they do show up, it's one of the most fun things you can use, because I love making a little Razor Wire fort. Now we got the pain pills. Pain pills are better than Band-Aids in my opinion, because even though they only give you temporary health, they do give you more. And in Back 4 Blood, there is many times in situations where I just need instantly health, and the pain pills, they will pop in instantly. So if I'm being molested by a tall boy, like normally what happens, the pain pills are something that's just, I just slam down and then boom, I'm fine. It's a quick way to instantly recover from the damage I just took. Sometimes it's even debatably better than a med kit, but the med kit is better long term, which is why it's going to be a little bit higher on the list. But the pain pills are still really good, and I love using them in this game. They're just as good, if not better, than the way that they were in Left 4 Dead. But even though I love pain pills in Back 4 Blood, I like the med kit just a bit more. Since the med kit's HP is permanent, it's better in the long run. It's really good on a nightmare run if you're playing with your buddies when you need to end up having that little last bit of health just to get to the safe room and compete with that last horde. It's so useful. Plus, if you can upgrade the med kit, dude, it's like a night and day difference. Okay, coming up next is going to end up being the pipe bomb. This is the best grenade just to get the zombies off of you, because it will just be something that you just chuck and you go, and you chuck and you go. You just forget about it because it will kill the zombies that are attracted by it. It's one of the only few grenades really in the game that is useful other than the frag grenade, because other than the frag grenade, there's like 2 others that are even worth picking up because I don't like the other ones, and the pipe bomb is one of those. So if you find a pipe bomb, definitely worth picking up, especially if you upgrade it, because there is 2 chapters I can think of in particular where this is extremely useful, and this is going to end up being a Highway to Hell, and then also the 3rd chapter in Evansburg, where you have to go down that long strip of hallway after you've had like 3 panic events in a row. I just can't remember its name to save my own life, but we all know that what I'm talking about if we played the game for more than a couple months. Now guys, for this next piece of equipment, I slept on this for a very long time. And this piece of equipment is going to end up being the flashbang. Now, I originally didn't like the flashbang in Back 4 Blood because I would usually flash myself. I know it sounds a little bit silly, but it's just the truth. But I didn't really end up using it that well. I was just bad at using the flashbang, so I just thought that the piece of equipment was bad. But I was wrong, and it was just me being bad with the piece of equipment, not that the equipment was bad. One of the ways that I found out that the flashbang was super good was through Mythbusting Mondays, because I would figure out things such as that you can throw this at the crows and completely eradicate them so you don't have to worry about like stepping on eggshells trying to get past them. Or you can stun pretty much any of the annoying special infected in the game, especially the Breaker. The Breaker is, in my opinion, a massive letdown for a tank or a special boss in this game, because he just ends up being annoying, and I hate that stupid storm cloud that he makes. And so the flashbang just delays that at least a little bit longer, so that way I can lay more lead into him before that inevitably will show up, because I just hate the idea of being in a confined space with that thing. I think that the flashbang is the ultimate counter to that, so it's really great just enough to deal with that BS, and that's why I like it. It just stops the BS from Back 4 Blood getting to you. So even though the flashbang was not originally my favorite, it is now considered the anti-BS grenade in my opinion. Okay everyone, so towards the end of the list here, coming in at the next spot, this is going to end up being the defibrillator, and I am so glad that this thing came back from Left 4 Dead, because in Back 4 Blood, it is a godsend. The defibrillator in Back 4 Blood is stronger than the Left 4 Dead version, because in Left 4 Dead, all it did was just revive teammates, whereas in Back 4 Blood, you can also use it as kind of like a makeshift quick revive from Call of Duty Zombies, where if you want to, you can revive people just significantly quicker with the defibrillator. It's actually quite ridiculous how much faster you will revive people, and they don't even have to be dead to do it. You can also stack multiple of them in a set, so that way if you have multiple teammates dead, you can still use the defibrillator and not only just have it be a one-use thing like it also was in Left 4 Dead. Now I know that over the last several months that they have been making the game easier and easier and easier, therefore leading to less BS deaths or just deaths in general, so therefore kind of indirectly nerfing the defib because you just don't need it because you won't die as often. But you don't need it necessarily because somebody dies. You can just use it for the quick revive speed, or you can just have it just in case you want to play the harder difficulties. You literally can't go wrong by picking up a defibrillator. It is worth picking up pretty much in all circumstances. And even though there's just only a few more pieces of equipment that are better than it, you should still really consider picking up a defib anytime you see it. Okay, so coming in at the next spot here, towards the very end, this is going to end up being the frag grenade. This has been good the entire life of Back 4 Blood. The frag grenade kills hordes of zombies, it kills special infected, it destroys bosses. If you're a zombie in Back 4 Blood and somebody has a frag grenade, you might as well just kiss your afterlife goodbye. This thing was so close to being number 1. I absolutely love the frag grenade. It's my favorite piece of equipment personally in the game. I think that's one of the most fun, but there is something that is just a little bit better because it leads to finding things such as more frag grenades. Okay everybody, so coming in at the number 1 spot for the best piece of equipment in all of Back 4 Blood, this is going to end up being the toolkit. The toolkit is without a doubt the best piece of equipment in Back 4 Blood because it gives you everything. If you end up finding a toolkit, it's like getting a ray gun out of the mystery box because you end up knowing what that is going to end up leading to. It's just going to end up leading to so much reward and satisfaction when you end up inevitably finding a toolkit room in Back 4 Blood. Because the toolkit rooms in Back 4 Blood are loaded with everything. They have ammo, med kits, cards, grenades, guns, everything that you would want. The toolkit allows you to get everything else in the entire game. That's why it's number 1. Who would not want the Back 4 Blood equivalent of the golden ticket? You get so much stuff for not only you, but also any of your teammates that are playing with you by just carrying one single piece of equipment on any of the 4 of you. If you have a toolkit, you win. You will win at Back 4 Blood because you don't need to carry anything else on you. The toolkit gives you everything in the game. This is why Carly is my favorite character to use in Back 4 Blood because she has so many good things on her kit just by default. She has my favorite weapons by default, and she has the toolkit by default. So that is why I decided to rank the toolkit as the number 1 best piece of equipment in Back 4 Blood. But who knows, maybe one day Turok will buff the other things, or they will end up nerfing the toolkit and things will kind of equal out. But until that day, this is my list, and I hope you guys end up enjoying ranking all the equipment in Back 4 Blood.
Hey meme lords, Jesus here. And you better have enjoyed that video there by the Eternal God Daddy Ninja. You should probably subscribe too, or the mighty Moab will come for your balls. If you enjoyed the video, you might like it too. And give me the memes. Flash, bang, boom!